Who doesn't love a bit of trash talk? It's a lot of fun, and that's G2 and Wolves in a nutshell. Now, we introduce our teams, just in case people don't know them too well. I don't know how we got here, but you know what? G2, Jesse, help me out. What does this squad have to offer?
Milos, G2 is a team that have known a lot of different players throughout their history, but coming into this event, I think it was starting to get very, very rocky for them, just losing out on Citizen, who moved to the Sonics moments before this event started. They pulled in Benjamaster, who has been playing out of his mind this event. G2 have always been that super team inside of Europe, but they've never reached those super results. Of course, at this 6th Invitational, they are looking so good. They have that potential to reach for the stars. They have the potential to make that lower bracket run, but they're gonna need to be able to hold it down. Obviously, Fabian, of course, their new coach as well, coming in right behind them. He's been through everything so far, and now he's got to lead this team in a different role.
And Benjamaster has come into this roster, and he has given this team so much balance. They look like an actual roster that is unified behind one single ideology, one single vision of how to play the game. That's Alamau going to the IGL role. That's Doki being the first entry, Benjamaster being the second entry. And we actually wanted to compare him. We wanted to compare him between Yunchping and Charlotte, which he played with Heroic, and the 6th Invitational here that he played with G2. Because one of the things that was leveled at Benjamaster was that he was an online player, was that he was a best of one player, is that, you know, he didn't turn up when it came to LAN. He's turning up all right. Look at that KD, look at those clutches, the entry, absolutely everything that G2 could have wanted for him, he has provided them and more so far. And that has been a big reason behind G2's success.
A lot of success they've had. A lot of people would not have expected them to make it here on the main stage because of the player changes that you've mentioned, Jesse, because of the newcomer that just came in a few weeks ago, as Jack was mentioning. So, yes, it is a bit of a miracle, but they have a miracle maker behind them in Fabian. He's done it before twice, and maybe he's exhausted his one Joker card in the playoffs. We'll have to see here on the main stage. Though, talking about G2's opponents, Wolves, in this case, the French team has never been at an SI main stage, and now they get to show off their skills, Jack.
And I think we saw just how much it meant to them when they beat G2, when they made the main stage in totality, because for them, they have had they see the online messages, they see the discussions on Reddit, they see absolutely everything criticizing their team, and them, especially when they hit international events. But one thing that I will say about this Wolves roster is when they are on it, particularly with regarding their team play, when they are executing, they are almost unstoppable when they're playing well and playing cohesively as one unit. It's when they don't do that that it tends to fall apart. Mowgli can sometimes go off and get himself entry picked quite a lot, and then they're playing from disadvantaged scenarios a lot of the time. They can still do it, but they need to be absolutely all over that team play, because when they start disadvantage, the pacing can be very, very slow for this roster, and that's a big criticism that gets leveled towards them. That being said, the first 2 group stage days, they were 0-2, they were not looking good. They brought it right the way back round. So they are a Wolves that are coming into this main stage in a decent amount of form.
Yeah, obviously this is a team that have had their struggles with pacing, right? That's been something that people have talked about quite a bit for this squad. They are slow. But I think there's one person that's really been picking it up. One person on the Wolves roster who has really sped things up for them. And of course, that's gotta be Mowgli. He's been so fast on the entry. He just goes. There's zero hesitation behind this guy. Frame perfect behind the drone. Banning his Yana doesn't seem to do anything. If you don't fill the map with barbed wire, it feels like there is nothing stopping this man from being in your sight 30 seconds into the round. Mowgli has been absolutely dominant throughout this tournament so far. He's their best rated player at the moment. His entry stats are incredible, and it's been fantastic to watch him so far. Montreal, the fastest in France, meet Mowgli here, his stats, and he does it on attack and defense too. Plus 12 on attack, plus 9 on D, second in the tournament for all 3 of those stats. He has been a monster for Wolves, and he definitely needs to be spoken about.
Well, a lot of rising happening on this Wolves squad. We're not even mentioning Rise himself, who's one of the old guys on the roster. Bebu joining him as the 2 keys, the cores of the squad, with a lot of young gunners that have been known for years, anyways, that they are incredible players. We've seen them in T2 competition, in French nationals, and finally having them on a French team that makes it here. And that is a big achievement. Of course, you see them with their support staff in Helby, Dilun, and Robs, who are very well known in both the NA and EU scene for their performance. So, moving on from that, how does Wolves' gameplay look like ahead of a map veto, we still do not know.
I think the thing for Wolves is they need to bring the synergy between, we talked about Mowgli and we spoke about Mowgli and the pacing. That is sometimes not with the team. And you're almost looking at two kind of sub-teams. Mowgli has his own kind of unique force, and then the remaining 4. I think bringing Mowgli back in, making it a full cohesive unit as 5 players, but then also I'm looking to Rise and Bibu to be bringing these younger players with them and making plays together.
And so from a general conversation, we focus on our map veto for this best of 3 matchup. We're going through BO3s until we hit a BO5 grand final on Sunday. So by now, we know all these teams have warmed up to them. We saw them in groups and playoffs. Theme will go away first. It's a 9-map pool, by the way, for those who are not familiar with it. Bank is picked up first by Wolves. They start on the attack. Skyscraper for G2, starting on the attack as well. And then finally, Oregon as our decider, G2 having the final say. Jesse, thoughts?
Bank is going to be tough here for G2. Wolves are on a 7-game win streak on Bank, and they've been flawless on the map all year long. They've beaten Secret, Pones, G2, Outsiders again, Mirage, and then they beat the only team who was foolish enough not to ban this against them at SI. That was Liquid. That is a tough one for G2 to go up against first thing in the morning.
Yeah, I agree. And then if you look at the Skyscraper pick as well from G2, the small map pool that gets criticized from Wolves is that they don't play Theme Park, they don't play Border, and they don't play Skyscraper. So it was very much expected that G2, who love Skyscraper, would pick into it, because that's the one out of those 3 that Wolves have been leaving open this whole event. And just coming back onto the Bank thing, G2, they looked really, in stage 3, they looked really poor on Bank, but they've picked it back up this tournament. I think G2 are running close to a full 9-map pool. So I expect them to be good on Bank, but Wolves are an entirely different beast on Bank.
Yeah, and then Oregon, I really think could go either way. G2's got the stats, 4-game win streak, those first 3 games. Coming a while ago, back in Stage 2, didn't touch it at all, Stage 3. Then here at the 6th Invitational, they've played it once. M80 in the lower bracket, they sent him home. So that's going to be a map that certainly G2 are comfortable on, but Wolves as well. I mean, historically, a strong map for them, Oregon, especially back in Stage 2. They did lose it once at this event. They lost to Liquid, but then they came back, beat OXG in playoffs, so they are absolutely comfortable here as well.
I think what's curious about this map veto is if you look at when these teams played each other, just a few days ago, the maps were Chalet and Cafe. Both teams have gone with a completely different banning strategy. Now it's hit the main stage. That was the much more expected. I was expected this kind of veto a few days ago. Both teams a few days ago went a little bit curveball. I think this one is a little bit more standard, and both teams will have been prepared for it.
So you guys did your predictions before we knew about the map veto. So can we bring that up on the screen, because we want people to know exactly, rub it in when we get to pull it off later. So G2 hyping up. Here is our predictions. Fresh and Jesse looking fantastic. Photos from SI22. Wolves for Fresh. Jesse on G2. The hate train continues, Jack.
Yeah, I must just be a G2 hater at this point. I think the Wolves team play this whole year has been coming towards this event, and I think on paper, G2 have won the map veto. I think on paper, G2 should be the stronger, but I just can't get away from Wolves.
And I think paper may be what prevails here. I think G2 have been so dominant throughout this tournament, right? They made that run through the lower bracket. They're on a 6-game win streak through the maps, coming through the lower bracket, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 for 6 total. G2 are on fire right now, and Wolves are going to really need to step it up to take them here.
All right. Jesse, Jack, thank you very much for that. Are you ready for game number 1? Are you ready? I missed that so much. Our beauties have already been seen on the screen. It's Des and Fluke. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Milos. Welcome to the casting desk. I'm Des. This is not Tim.
Lasergate.
You got a bit of hair since last time, Tim.
I know. It's been a very stressful, long Montreal. No, unfortunately, Tim cannot participate today. He is feeling a bit under the weather, so please, everybody, give your best wishes to Tim. Last minute, I'm stepping in as best as I can to keep this idiot company.
She'll do her best. And we've got 2 fantastic teams to keep us company as well. G2 versus Wolves, a game that we've seen more times than probably we care to count at this point. A really exciting fixture, some big names up in the entry game here. It's so hard to call which way it goes.
I mean, that's it. We saw them a few days ago. We saw them in an 8-6, 8-6. It couldn't have been more intense. And it's sort of the history of these 2 teams. It's never half a game. It's always all the way. And there was...
No, it's all the way.
All the way, Des. And there was so many moments where it was just big clutches, big plays, big performances, Benja hiding in a bathroom. We're getting these moments and you're sort of like, how do you step it up again? Because they have to.
Absolutely. For me, when I come back to looking at this game, the big conversation comes in that entry battle. Doki going up against Mowgli, that's where it's really going to come down to how these rounds are shaped. But Doki believes even 4v5, his team can get the goods done. But here we go with map 1. In we step to the halls of Bank, and we'll see who can prevail in this first map of this best of 3.
Ooh, it's feeling fun. I'm so excited. I think it's the thing is obviously here in Montreal, as it's pronounced by Milosh, as he's just walked past.
Bonjour, Montreal.
Oh, bonjour, Montreal. And it's so exciting. And to start with this, a game that we know, a game that we've had in the hotel. I mean, even last night, about 11, I heard someone scream down the hotel corridor, "I'm coming for you, Bibu."
There's been a little bit of beef between these teams, interestingly. Doki mentioned it in the video. He was saying, you know, that Mowgli's been like, "Oh, you're going to shake, you're going to shake." And he's like, "No." And I said to him, "Do you think you can beat them?" He's like, "No, we're going to destroy them." Big, strong words, lots of belief in themselves here. A little bit of a rivalry being formed, and we're ready for this one. Got to say, Bibu cutting the hair as well.
Oh, bald
That's
Bibu
commitment
buff.
to this game.
It's the bald Bibu buff. It's dangerous. You worry about it. But at the same time, the buffs kind of have to come through. Like, when we've seen these teams get to where they are, it's sort of a mix of who's been popping off and who hasn't. Last time they were here, P4 went unbelievable. Bibu, throughout the sort of playoff stage, has been much sharper than he was during the groups. G2, some of the players have dropped off a little. We don't have Doki, we don't have Alamau defining a game, but we have Benjamin, we have Virtue coming back into it, finding these big moments. So it's really, you know, it's impossible to call. It's just truly impossible to call who is on a better form right now, because anything can happen.
We have rifled through those bans. Ying, the big one that really stands out there for me alongside the Nook. If you've ever watched Bank before, you know that Nook is a go-to ban, but the Ying, looking towards the smokes, the Candelas, the executes that operator enables, it makes total sense to see it taken away. One of our most banned operators here so far at SI as well. I've only just seen that for the first time, that we have the venue lighting up a bunch of wonderful colours when the action phase starts.
I know, it's cool. I want to see, because we didn't get a true taste of the rehearsals yesterday, but we start here in the basement of Bank, as expected. Solis, also as expected, consistent. And with the double down of Alamau on the pulse, it's an information game that G2 have played pretty well throughout most of this tournament. They have an awareness, and they have a lockdown on what Wolves want to do. They set it on the desk. Wolves are really good when they set up, when they can play as a team. So how do you shut it down? Remove that from them.
One thing you'll often see is this layered sort of defense that comes out of G2 across a number of their maps, where Doki's normally the first one to meet them in. Then you'll have Benja as kind of the second line of defense, and then you'll find out Alamau will be lurking somewhere nearby, just in case you forget about that third member. So really, that's going to be the idea for Wolves, is to peel back these layers one by one, take them out, and get down to a spot where you can execute in a 5v3 or potentially a 5v2, assuming you can clear them all out. A little bit of support from Virtue as well around blue stairs, just hoping that someone's going to come sniffing. As of yet, not to be the case, as you can see. 2 or 3 members of G2 hold up inside open area, just trying to gather a bit of information before they drop back through the hatch in the next 5 seconds or so.
I mean, you could see the hunt was coming. You had P4 just on the shoulder, and his impact in this game could be big. He's only gone positive in 2 series throughout this whole tournament. One of them was against G2, and he went about +11 by the end of it. You need sort of that sharpness, that force on the front to work alongside Mowgli and work alongside Bibu, as I said before, who's been a big boon. The starts across the top. They're looking down green stairs, angling and pressuring the players. The first engagement, they always say, it's Doki. Always a bit risky, and Doki's tempted.
He's feeling a little bit cheeky, right? You want to try and poke your head up there and find out a kill or 2 if they're getting themselves into slightly too comfortable positions. But it looks here for the Wolves that their big focus instead is going to be trying to work out towards square side down. So potentially a bit of a dump in towards open area hatches once they have that control. We're into that last 60 seconds though, Emmy, and I'm thinking to myself, there's not tons of real information coming in on the downstairs right now. They've done really well to keep the drones alive, but they've still got a bit of work set up to do, knowing there are still C4s and smokes available on the other side.
It feels cautious. It feels like they're concerned about this first engagement. They have to have it go their way. They have to start with that mentality, that momentum. They have all these pings, all these ideas, but everybody's 3 feet, 5 feet away from the start of it. Who is going to be the first one that says, screw it, we're in?
The thing is, they've still got, again, all 3 smoke canisters and C4s, and another Vulcan canister has gone off. They've got enough here to hold out, I think, Emmy, if they carry on. Wolves are going to have to force the issue here. They're going to have to go aggressive. They're going to have to burn through a bunch of utility. Shinka inhaling loads of gas. Mowgli finds one. Bibu goes down elsewhere to Benja. We're into a 3 versus 4. It looks like it's going from bad to worse for the Wolves as we get into the last 10 seconds.
They hit a brick wall, but suddenly a bit of blue pops up. It's a 2 versus 1, technically, and now it's nobody. As you said, there was so much still in the pockets. The Wolves, they weren't quite in a conversation with G2. They were trying to say, well, this is ours, this is ours, this is ours, and G2 said, okay, have it. We've still got the site and pockets full of danger.
For me, it was the discipline, right?
Yeah.
Like, they had all that utility, and I've seen teams before layer C4s and smokes on top of each other. I've seen them panic toss C4s thinking there's something going on when nothing is happening. But for G2, that was probably the most disciplined hold of the downstairs I think I've ever seen. 60 seconds left, they rotate through one Goyo canister after the other. They have smoke start coming out from Virtue. They've got the C4s if required. And you saw Wolves have to make this sort of desperation play as we got into those last 10 seconds. And sure enough, they got a couple of kills, but had no way through to actually get the plant down. Really well played by G2, not looking to get too aggressive, falling back step by step. Wolves have got to be able to be a little bit faster than this, I feel. Try and pinch onto these players that are trying to fall back and give yourself the numbers advantage before you come round to the execute.
Round we go. Open is the next sort of potential force here, and I'm always eyes on and Oryxes on bank. I love it. I mean, in EUL alone, we've seen big plays up, rotations around on the back end. You're thinking of stock. You're thinking of rotating around underneath and maybe hitting the elevator shaft. There's just possibility. Benja, what are you up to?
Not at all surprised to see him being aggressive in the earlier round. Again, you see this out of Doki normally. He's the first point of contact initially. But then Benja is always lurking somewhere nearby. The trade play between several members of the G2 side is great. It's like a triangle between those front 3 that I mentioned a little bit earlier on. So you are going to see them looking to control parts of the map, but there's a potential backstab. P4 working his way in through the basement. Not yet spotted out, of course, but he could strike big and catch G2 on that return back to site like I mentioned earlier on.
Who is going to be that first bit of pressure here for Wolves? It was slower, it was steadier, fine, but it's bank. You have to lead in with some of the aggression. You have to make sure that you step up this early on in the sort of fight, because G2 aren't going to shy away from it when it comes to their door, but they're not going to go hunting for it. There is a take.
I mean, that's a Doki kill.
I mean, that's a Doki kill.
Nice and cheeky, straight out the door, bringing down Rise, who was at the top of blue stairs. That does give a bit of a whiff here that you might have 1 or 2 players lurking through basements, so G2 should find themselves being a little bit more careful. P4 still to emerge, I imagine, up marble stairs here. Also got Bibu looking to work his way forwards. In fact, no, P4 has doubled up around square as well. So Wolves all looking to come in together, but Benja is still in archives, Emmy.
He's causing problems. He's looking for these fights. Another one's about to swing on his left-hand side. He's not fully aware, but that'll give some of the game away. It sprays and peppers. Not too many bullets left in that gun. Benja can't quite get the full connection as Doki does find Bibu. Shield's gone. P4 does win one out. However, look at what has been removed from the side of Wolves here. No more hard breach, no more Monty, no more of that A-plan push. At this point, it is all down to P4 and Shinka to see if they can try and bring a bit of a trade game. Unfortunately, they cannot even get close. Shinka has to swing. Does some of the close damage to 1, pops his way back round to Archives and looks for the lead on the next fight, but with a minute, it's a lot of time here. G2, you remember, hero plays were your downfall last time. Please stop trying to be a hero. We've suddenly gone into a 2 versus 2 from a 4 versus 2.
Oh, Shinka!
Shinka is going absolutely massive. He has all the time in the world. At this point, Alamau is in this clutch situation. He's crept in close. He's able to win one out. And it is teetering on the edge, both of them with such a small amount of health. He's got a grenade, he can put pressure onto the swing and pop round on the back end. Alamau just has to sit, stay steady. The kit has to be put, it has to be pressured towards the site. He's got the SMG and the shotgun depending on the range. This could be Alamau's, there's the ping, but he does not move. The pullout comes. He's playing this time as much as possible. Just saw a glimmer, just saw a sliver of the player on the back end. P4, what are you gonna do? Do you swing and pre-fire the angle? Do you know where he is?
Shinka! Unreal 1v4 coming out. G2 going to be livid that they've peaked him time and time again, and he's taken scouts for fun that round. A player, let's not forget, Emmy, that when we started out in this competition, wasn't performing the best. Not really hitting too many shots, but to hit 4 in that round and win it for your team is absolutely unbelievable.
I mean, a 4 versus 1 with a player down on the ground. G2, hey, it's me. I cast your game the other day. There was something Fabian said. Stop doing the bleeping hero plays. We're throwing this game. He was proven correct, and you just think, okay, you gotta have that, you know, panache. You gotta have that want to fight, but you gotta not do that.
As energetic as they were during the group stages as well. Incredible. You know, part of the story for me today coming in, you touched on P4 already, was are we going to see Mowgli and P4 firing? Because you can almost guarantee you'll have Doki and Benja firing, but when you've got your backline able to pull off plays like that as well, zero complaints at all. A great way to get Wolves back into things here. It's a bit of a curse really for G2, because I think back to the start of last year when they played Bank against then known as Rogue, now Koi. Although they won that game, Koi or Rogue, for me, were the better team on the day, but G2 were winning because of Citizen and Doki's hero plays, going absolutely nuclear, popping off with 2Ks, 3Ks, and 4Ks every single round. There, I kind of feel people have wanted to play hero. Exactly like Fabian said, let's dial it back a little bit, boys. We don't need to go silly, hold your crossfires, but they paid the price there. Round 3 we go into. Virtue, once again, as he was in the previous round, is currently starting up on the top floor on that Oryx. He'll be up there more looking to pop out when someone does start to work their way through ATMs, of which there are 2, both Bibu and P4 pushing in from that west side of the map.
Will they find them? You can see it's a very different approach this time. Instead of going for the take directly towards the open site, they've pulled themselves around the single player at the top of square, fine, and some pressure on the windows, and round Banana and Virtue hot-footed out of there before things become a little bit dicey, but otherwise it's a lobby take. It's the big open space, draw the attention away, go away from the shield, which plays against the response from G2. We saw so many Goyo canisters put on that close sort of other plant, and it seems like with this initial approach, they're going for more of a study control.
It's a little bit of a panic smoke coming out of Alamo there a second ago. I know he's still got 2 left in pocket, but to burn the one when there was no one there is probably a little bit, you know, panicky.
Yeah.
I thought it was Wolves who got the most panic in the first 2 rounds, but maybe now you're starting to see G2 slightly rattled by that massive 4v1.
They've got to know. I mean, they have to know that it's a big aspect of their play that has cost them dearly throughout this tournament and against teams like this. It's sort of said how you play on the day is a very important factor, and as I called now, the attention towards stock. They've got themselves in over the top. You can get control of this space. You can cause problems, but this kind of take means that those loose roam players, if you haven't got the confirmation on the kills, they can define this whole round. There's a lot of motion available to them.
They've got to make use of it, though, when it presents itself, right? It's all good having those roaming players, but if they aren't near, they execute when it all kicks off, they may struggle to have an impact. We saw some really cool stuff the other day. In fact, this is pretty cool. Doki being down already there. Mowgli taking control of square and looking for a couple more victims.
I mean, he's getting in close. He's hoping someone tries to get the player. He's waiting for the audio. Will he go full brass for the swing? There's 1 take. There's 2! Is it 3? Caught in the fire, and he finds it! No, Doki just gets the trade out there.
Did you see the B4 as well. Really thought Doki might find him, but he marches in. Alamau caught completely unaware. And this is what I was talking about. These players out on the road, if they're not too close to when things kick off, they aren't going to get going. 2-1 to Wolves on the attack.
It's that pressure. If the comments that we made was round 1 of Wolves, come on, you got to be a little bit sharper, a little bit snappier, different sights, sure. Round 2 and 3, it's just been progressing and faster and faster and faster. I love that sign.
Love Siege, 8
Love Siege, 8 Tez.
Simple as.
Simple as.
Thanks, Fresh.
Thanks, Fresh. But, I mean, G2, I think you saw it there in Alamau Smoke. You saw it there in the play, the pickup. Benja just sort of back to the door, running away. It's strange to see him not turning into a fight.
I think probably because what they assumed was before you had a member of Wolves trying to push into the room itself, they would have popped out the Goyo canister that was in the door. Probably in hindsight, you know, hindsight being 2020 is exactly what it is, 2020. But if you look back at that round and say, okay, well, could Benja have shot out the Goyo Vulcan canister and then gone for the pickup? Sure, it would have been the much safer option, but in the moment, opted not to do that, assuming that instead Wolves would take it out before they tried to push in. They were proven wrong, and Mowgli just really demonstrating again why he has been such a demon throughout this tournament. First quarter's down, though. Downstairs, back into the basement we go again, Emmy. Let's see if Wolves can be a little bit quicker or pinch onto a couple of members of G2, because last time it came down to that utility dump, and G2 have got exactly the lineup ready for exactly the same defense once again.
I'm having flashbacks, Derry.
Two?
to the last time these two teams met, it was a similar sort of build into the game where you look down the side of G2 and it's quite even. It's not that anyone's falling too far behind or too far ahead. Then you look over to Wolves. Those players that have popped off, 3 of them so far, have all pretty much been the defining factor of a round. Mowgli, you have obviously P4 going absolutely massive in the second round. And it's that idea, that fire of how do you stop someone on their day? How do you stop someone that is feeling this game more than any other? Maybe the threats in the elevator were correct.
Maybe very so. I mean, we'll really wait to see how things transform in the second half. I do like to give teams... I mean, okay, that's the way to take out the biggest problem on the other side. Doki starting to feel himself as well, taking down that entry on the other side. I spoke about this entry battle between these two being the defining factor of this game, and that is not going to change.
I mean, we talk about a panic smoke before, and this isn't a man that's panicked, but maybe a little bit irritated. He's looking into the fight either side of Banana. The pressure comes on the back end. It's pretty much impossible to defend from 2 angles, but he's done more than enough from 1. Remember, the side is all the way down in lockers. Doki, you said it, he is happy. And he trusts the team to play in the 4 versus X, regardless of what's going on.
You've also taken out a hard breacher here, so I don't think Wolves have got enough to get every single hatch opened up. They've got to work through the top floor. They've got the 2 exothermics, but one of those they probably want to commit to the thermite wall. So really, they've got 1 hatch they can have on their side here. Doki has done enough in that round, but what I like was the response from G2. He goes down that top floor. They aren't overcommitted to supporting him, but the 2 players that were still out on the round, they get straight back to site saying, boys, it's 4v3. They don't have a headbanner anymore. Mowgli's gone. We've got to sit, hold our angles, and not give them 1v1s again.
Time ever-presently ticking away, and they're just pinging and rotating their way around. They've still got gates, they've still got canisters, they've still got C4 and a pulse in the read of it to try and put the pressure across, and while there's pressure still leaning back in, the canister pops, and so does Alamau. Removes P4 on the back end, and if the Twitch hasn't been able to get the rest of the Goyo canisters, that's going to turn into another problem.
You know what I realize we might miss while we're here on stage?
What?
Back timeouts.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to hear the commentary. Maybe we'll hear it. Who knows? Who knows? But again, a lot of work being done by G2 here. A lot of it being done by Doki in the early round. We're now into that last 20 seconds. We still have 3 smoke canisters in back pocket. The first one coming out. Alamau's trying to make a play, but does get stung for that one. That's the only hero play that will be allowed in the round, though. Last 10 seconds coming in. Wolves, it's now or never. Find your kills, or this round is done.
I think it's pretty done at this point, and it's locked in by G2. They pull themselves back level, but twice on the same site. And yeah, it's Bank. It's the sort of map that Wolves wanted to come to, and it's a good one for attackers. You can see the 4-2 split is not the most common, but it's not unheard of. And you have the idea here that we want to see more like this from Doki. We want to see those adventurers. We want to see those sort of plays in bits of motion. There's the C4.
Oh,
nice.
Beautiful.
It's the pulse.
Alley-oop.
And then he ends up on the top floor somehow.
Well, he thought... Well,
You just think, how did Alamau get there to be?
The thing is, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was actually a call made by the team, you know? Okay, main stairs is now clear. We know there are 2 coming down through blue. Go for the flank. If we can hit them and end the round that way, no problem. And in the 4v3, you probably don't mind burning 1 member to try and make that happen. So overall, a good call, I think. I don't blame them at all for it. I don't think it was Alamau going off the tether and trying to do anything too crazy. G2 still find themselves with the round. The thing is, Emmy, with how the last couple of rounds have gone in that first quarter, Wolves won both. You're staring at a 4-2 half.
Yep.
I do look back, though, at the second round and look at that big clutch that came out and go, realistically,
It shouldn't have happened.
it shouldn't happen
Shouldn't
again.
have happened.
So then suddenly it's a 3-3 half, and 3-3 halves seem to be the narrative that we've had in so many games here at SI. I forget the exact number, but I know at the end of group stage, over half of our games have gone to overtime. It's been so ridiculously close.
G2. Continually juggling operators, who's going to play what, where, and when. It more seems like pulling it out of hat at points. We've already had a pretty consistent rotation of who's on what role, including the Oryx, including, you know, obviously now Blur has picked up the Goo Mines Elysian. Where they want to try and put the pressure onto becomes a bit of a tougher understanding here. Doki has obviously had most of the appearance in terms of the entry statistic, but it has strictly been Mowgli, who I believe has the best entry out of anyone in the whole tournament. He's something like...
Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
G2, hello, phoning G2. Yeah, collect call.
Amazing. Now they've got to react. Shinka finds one. Doki into a trade, but answered by Rise straight away. Wolves really caught G2 by surprise here, and they've got to scramble for an answer. Bibu inside the lobby catches another one on the rotate round. They've got this set up to perfection, Emmy.
I mean, they caught even our observers and us by surprise, the spray across. They're looking side to side. You're looking at the timer. Only about 10 seconds left to make the distance towards the kit. At this point, it's just being locked out, and Virtue has an impossible task ahead of him. Des,
yes.
What happened?
G2 were just so focused, I think, on trying to work their way around open area that they got stung in archives big time. I don't know. You had Doki and a couple of players hanging down that side, 1 or 2 hanging up on the second floor, but even I missed that one. Blink and you'd have missed it.
Well, if you're unaware, there is a tech timeout that has been called by G2. There is the man.
The myth, the legend.
Unfortunately, we can't hear him, so I'm assuming...
It's probably got the F-bomb in there about 17 times.
I mean, you can see he's angry, and you understand why rounds like that shouldn't be happening on this stage.
I think the big message you'll probably have coming out to the team is you look half asleep, boys. Like, look back at round 2 when you gave Shinka the 1v4. Look at the round just now where you've let them slip through a defense that we probably ran through 1,000,001 times. You know, little things are costing them rounds here. There's 2 rounds arguably that G2 either should have won or at least stopped happening. But Wolves are the ones very firmly in the... Oh, we get the replayed audio. Okay, it stopped that 3rd time.
See, that's the thing there is... You have a conversation, you have an idea of, all right, Wolves might have stolen a 2nd round from a huge play. There's no question that that round was theirs.
Oh, the fade out.
Little fade away.
I love it. It's very much spoken much about the coaches for these 2 teams as well. Not forgetting that Liloon has obviously been around for the longest time.
Oh, yeah.
Now through with Wolves, stayed here seemingly forever, along with Helby as well, of course. He's also behind the scenes. And then G2, Fabian doesn't really need much introduction, but also got Titan behind the scenes as an analyst as well.
Exactly.
The backroom staff, I think, actually, as far as it comes to star-studded backroom staff, both teams have got that.
I think that's always the thing about sort of those people on a team is we're very familiar with them.
Those people,
the parade, the ones that can't shoot anymore, Fabian, is they have so much to them. We'll hear rumors and rumblings from an analyst side of, have you heard about this guy called Titan? Have you heard about what, you know, Helby's worked out or Leland's worked out? And it's always that curiosity of they're the ones that have the book of plays. Open once again, and obviously seen twice, lost twice. One of them shouldn't have been.
Where's Doki?
Where is Doki?
Oh, he's on site. That's a rarity.
How is Doki?
Doki is sat on site. Everyone else is off on the top floor, trying to do work upstairs, for example. Benj is out towards Archive side. They've really got a good spread here across the whole team. It's just rare not to see Doki being the one taking the entry. Maybe wanting to pause a couple of rounds here, have more impact in the later stages. So a small formation change, you might say, for G2.
Virtue is the one playing the power position where there was some panic before. This time, they're going to get the barricades up. They're going to get themselves what seems like more of a hold above. They're not going to pull back. They're not going to give away territory, not as freely as they have before, but with a little bit more time wasted, a little bit more pressure. P4, in the meantime, sneaks his way underneath. There's about to be a quick swing round with the skeleton key. Hot droned in on the back end. They had the pickup player on the IQ as well, just in case. And now, suddenly, those banana players are in a trickier situation. P4 finds Doki. Hey, we know where he was, inside sight. So suddenly, Virtue has all these alarm bells ringing. I'm under pressure here. They're putting pressure on the side. He's got to fight his way out. He gets the first. Cannot see the second on the windows.
Now he knows.
And now he's going to see if he can just hold on a bit longer. He's looking for this engagement. Will they give it to him, though? Because they don't have to.
He gives them a small breather, I think, but really there's a lot of damage already done by Wolves here, and Virtue up here on the front line. I think he's probably sick and tired of seeing the team just crumble around him being left in 1vx's. Clearly wants to make an impact, make himself heard, dipping back inside here as well, away from the window, turning his attention inwards to the map itself.
Alamau hasn't moved.
Nope.
He stayed in the same sort of spot, and finally, we get some of the rumblings, because finally, remember, there's only really one in sight, but Blur at least wins out the first fight. They're inside the kitchen, trying to put the pressure on. They're putting the pressure down on the kid as well, as you said, and how are they going to rotate their way back in? Blur is removed. Bibu cuts the site in half, gets control of Archives, and swings to the fight on green. Shinka, he's still going to try and get the plant. Alamau, he's able to win out one, but Mowgli on the back end, and it's all down to Virtue. Gets the cover, gets the second!
There he is! Put in the front line, but can still peel to the back and decimate Wolves when it matters most. That one was personal. G2 win a round and take us up to 3-3.
Well, they got the 3-3 half, which is kind of what we maybe said they should, but about half of those rounds shouldn't have.
No.
I think that's the fair way of breaking it down. You're looking at confrontations that are impossible to call at points.
What I will give is, honestly, that was one of the stronger attacks from Wolves as well, I think. I know the rounds have been great, but the pincer play, they always had someone ready to take a trade, even here against Virtue. One on window, unlucky not to get the trade coming through straight away. Then when it came around to sides itself, Virtue wins the 1 versus 2. After Shinka won the 1 versus 4, you really can't knock someone for taking a big hero play and coming out on top. Just a great round overall by Wolves and by G2 in response, despite being down 2 so early on.
Ooh, look at this, 5 cameras to reveal drone spots. I mean, with Solus on the board, you'll see teams leave them outside for a long period of time. You don't just want to have them thrown away. If they're set up, they'll be spotted. So keep them.
As safe as you can.
But this, you know, it was the game that we had the other day. The drone economy from G2, to put it politely, wasn't great. It was, there's a lot of other words, and there's probably worse words that Fabian would use. You'd see them, you know, 2 minutes, 1:30 left on the round, and they only have 4 drones. They only have 3 drones left. It's a big loss against a team that can work as sort of tight as Wolves can.
I think they'll be quite happy they've got all 5 drones still alive from that as well. Even with the Solus being on board, they've spotted out that there was the Echo. They've got a couple of drones looking for flanks downstairs, for example. So it does feel like they're ready here in this first defense. You'll see quite a few differences, I think, to what we saw out of G2 as well. Heck, we already have. When you look at the castle barricades being on side in terms of the setup that it invites and the way these two teams are playing, for me, looking at how good Wolves were at pincering onto individual players in that last round, really for G2, we've got to see a similar start coming out if you're going to shut down a player like Mowgli.
How do you deal with a problem like Mowgli?
You have to put him in the dirt.
Well, let's see.
Pray that he doesn't do it to you first, which often he will.
I mean, well, that's the thing about Mowgli. As I said before, he's the best enterer of the whole game. He even tips Newers on that scale at this point. And when his performances haven't been as sort of marked about or written, it really shows how much potential Wolves have. If the rest of the squad can move in and start trying to put the pressure alongside it, you can see P4 is well and truly on the hunt for the fight. Baits the play, shoots it. With
that was bait.
Yeah, getting the cover on the top, almost found it. But look at Wolves. Look at they're stacked up under archives and above.
Alabama lucky to still be alive after that. I mean, they know the P4's around here. They tried to bait it in with Benja. It's why he was still sat waiting the door. We've seen a few teams go for this kind of bait play, by the way, although it's Rise to start things off. Benja being down, dropping his way back in towards site here. Again, Wolves, like G2, happy that they've got a numbers advantage and are now happy to play on site. Except for P4.
Except for P4. G2, in the meantime, they're trying to hunt. They're trying to find that loose thread, and we complimented the last round that we saw from Wolves on it because they were so quick. There was always a second body. They made sure that time became a factor, but to be fair, the first round we did the opposite. So G2, they still have time to grow. They still have opportunities. They're just being a bit steady. They're trying to find an engagement. I'm not entirely sure where that's coming from.
It was me.
Ow.
I brought an air horn.
Oh, right. I don't know how Tim puts up with you.
He doesn't. That's why he's not here.
Yeah, true. True, maybe that's why. But how do they put up with those grenades? Both of them. Neither makes impact. You're looking at 50 seconds. As far as I know, the Wolves still standing as well. And P4, top square.
I feel like Wolves are going to be very happy with this. Think about how they started their attacks. They were very bunched up. They pushed just 4 or 5 together at the same time. G2 have been very spread out, and Wolves have punished them by just hiding around corners and looking to tag them down that way. That's how Rise found Benja early on Square. There was no one there for a trade. There was no real support coming in on drones for him, so he got punished for that. That's the kind of thing G2 will need to get better at, I think, to beat Wolves, is to play more as a team, rather than looking for your solos, but they found one. Can't find the second as Rise gets the trade.
I mean, 15 seconds, they're hitting Beepers, they're hitting Stock Catch, and they're just hitting Wolves. Wolves entirely pushing them back in, and they take the round, but G2 had no time.
You can tell where the French fans are in the audience as well. Every single round, Mowgli just appealing to them for the cheers as they go. Again, I know we're sat at 4-3 on the scoreline, but for G2, the play style here on that first round is a little bit concerning. We do need to see some changes. They've already had their attack timeout as well. Do you want to woo as well?
No, I have to be unbiased. No wooing from me, but the audience...
What sound would G2 make?
Tears, mainly.
It would just be a Fabian voice line. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's quotes of Fabian. Okay, G2, well, if you are slow onto open, let's see how much faster you can be on a slower site. You have to try and have a lead in. And we said this a lot throughout this playoff spirit is Benja was the guy. Benja was the factor. He was the solution, as he tweeted, because he would make those plays. When you're suddenly in this sort of deadlocked situation, he would appear and get a kill, get 2 kills, might be traded off, but it starts the conversation.
One thing you can't forget is that some players in live environments like this on LAN, you know, in a bit with a crowd as well on a big stage, they thrive in that.
Oh, yeah.
They get only better. And I'm not saying this is like why Benja is 2-6. He's having a rough game. They all are, really. They are being bullied around the map by Wolves, but it's a lot to adapt to. Not forgetting that he's equally, you know, really, really young. It was a miracle, frankly, that Spoit played as well as he did all the way through to them winning Berlin back in August, right? So it might just take a bit of time. It might take a map, for example, then to drop and work their way back into it. Not forgetting that it is Wolves' map pick, but things are still really tight at 4 and 3. It's far from over.
Exactly. It's not their map. They're leaning in. It grew into a 3-3-1/2 after a very shaky start for Wolves, even though it was even. It, as we've said many times, shouldn't have been. P4, he's suffered a scrape through the open windows, but hasn't handed over the territory just yet. You can see G2 still going for the full clear. Doki up top. Just sort of playing against it. The first bit gone, but they still have, obviously, pockets of utility minus C4. Okay. Goodbye, P4. See you later.
What does he take with him? Nothing really as well, so it's not a massive loss in the form of the Solus. Like, sure, the information would be great, but they've got all the tools they still need. I mean, the C4's gone from Rise, but they've still got the Vulcan canisters deployed. They will have 1 Yokai online. They've got 3 smoke canisters. We were really heaping praise on G2 for having all of that still online at 60 seconds. If they can hold out another 40 without burning through utility, which I imagine they will with Shinka playing on blue stairs, there it comes now, they could start to get punished as we get through, and the Twitch is already getting work done on site. This is much faster from G2 than what we saw out of Wolves so far. Wolves need to make sure they're being careful in this execute.
It almost feels like they know how to attack this one. The pressure's going to come around. They're going to get the hatch open, see if they can swing onto it, but they have to make sure they don't get swung onto. Benja with the cover. There's some ADSs behind the shield. They want the hatch to be open, and then if the player tries to get it out of there, he knows he's got to potentially play his life, and you know, with the danger of the hot canister behind him, with the drones rolling through, another smoke canister potentially set up there, playing underneath. He doesn't have an escape. A misthrown first grenade. The player wasn't all the way around the back, and at this point, how much longer is he going to sit there?
Got to push it from the bottom as well, but I don't know if that Vulcan canister went off. There we go. Now it pops out. He's safe. Wow. Gets one with the shotgun as Mowgli finds a second. A very committed defense coming out of Wolves for these blue stairs.
Oh, Mowgli with one more down on the back end of green, and what seemed like a fairly standard setup and go has gone. They've removed the players. The player in blue still stands. Blur and Alamau, all that's left. He's dropped himself into sight via the hatch, but he's surrounded. And he's torn up. Blur, 20 seconds. They know where he is. He's trapped in the back of a box. 3 players left. One's about to swing him on his left. He's got one on his right-hand side as well. He's able to get another 1 versus 1, and the left-hand side player pulls himself further away.
Any plan?
I mean, he has the kit, he has the option. Whether they have the intel or not, we'll probably find out very soon.
They're coming, but they are coming in. Slow pulls off there, finds Pivot, but doesn't know about the last, and Shinka's going to waste time here. I think he gets away with it. So close for Blur, but Shinka goes the 1v4. God, it's me, not you. Wolves up 5 and 3.
Second time they've been able to thread 2 rounds together in a row there, and we said this was better from G2. Then it got a bit worse. I don't know if people can hear from home, but I know there are mics in the audience.
There's a lot of going on.
A lot of a woos.
For the Wolves, obviously.
Yeah. I mean,
just in case you think it's booze, it's not booze, it is a woos.
Mowgli was sharp as attack.
He was. I mean, really, Doki was kicking himself there. He's had 5 or 6 bullets to try and win the gunfight against Mowgli. At that range, with the ARX, you should be winning it every day of the week.
Yep. How you play on the day, mate.
It's how you play on the day. This is the wonderful thing, and I always say this about Siege in general, is that on the day itself, a team can be 50% better than normal or 50% worse than expected. You have players that don't show up, for example, or you're just not hitting your shots. Everything else can be going right in terms of strats, and I gave an example earlier on when we had Rogue versus G2 back in Stage 1 of VUL last year. On the day, Rogue were the better strategical team, in my opinion, but G2 still hit their shots, got 2Ks, 3Ks, and 4Ks across every single round, and they won the game as a result. Just goes to show, if you're not hitting your shots, Siege, as an FPS at its core, will not go in your favor.
G2 Timeout, obviously, a fair few rounds in the past now, and before you even got to this
And Wolves are not about to offer them one.
And Wolves are not about to offer them one. However, if we have a look at the showdown last time, G2, they had a 5-2 lead, and it flitted away from their fingers to get to OT. At one point, Wolves on the second map had a 6-4 lead, and G2 were able to bring it back from that point onwards to OT. You know, it's never really over for these teams, but it's getting over that mental hurdle of we're missing some of these engagements, we're whiffing some of these shots. We don't quite have Benja, who was, again, that big prominent power player, but they do have a little bit more, I think, Alamau, they have a little bit more Doki this showdown than the last one, as those two weren't quite in the same connection before.
When it comes to entry, you've got Wolves currently set at 3 and 1 as well. Just, oh, sorry, +3 overall. No, +2, I'm a liar, I can't do maths.
It's all right, neither can I.
So,
That's what Tim held.
That's what Tim does.
He held the maths down.
He likes his numbers.
Tim and Hap.
They hold down the fort. Hold the fort. Either way, numbers-wise, I'm looking down the kind of scores that we've got here. Like the cost so far is like way in the lead for Wolves, unsurprisingly because they are 2 rounds ahead, but entries with them, KD is with them. They are dominating the numbers here, and it's showing in the gameplay again just how they've approached a lot of their rounds. As C4 onto Doki, down he goes again. Cannot get a foot into this second half.
No, he is being repeatedly shut down as he was before. Wolves target him, whether in the elevators with threatening words of shaking hands or
in
not.
the server.
Benja, though, does get one back, does get a grenade kill, a skill he has been an absolute master on. Not to just use his name. How can Virtue get a lead? And he's a little bit alone. And he's trying to swing the fight. There's players on his right and on his left, and he's able to win the first. The second should and does get the return, the response. BBU had to step in there, and a very important trade back.
It's been the tail of the tape again, Emmy. Yeah, again, a 2 versus 1 being sought out by Wolves. G2 leaving Virtue to push alone. I think Blur had just taken the decision to get himself up and out of the map. Maybe he was on the window repelled to assist, but it's again come down to the numbers game, and Wolves just keep on sending more guns than G2 do.
Shinka locks Alamau out on the top floor, and, well, the UMP, it can be a beast. I think it was Foxay who did an ace with it at one point on this site. I definitely know it was Bank. And then you steal the setup and see if you can replicate it. Blur, he's going to see if he can steal the site itself. He's swung his way in. They did have a bit of banana control before, but lost it now. And the 2 versus 3. Blur, he's creeping his way through. He's trying to go a bit unchecked. Wolves aren't handing him anything. Look at the time, look at the fight. Takes the first swing, ducks under the second, doesn't get traded out. Benja with some of the cover on the back end.
He's just got to hold.
Looking for the loose fight. Blur, hold your nerve, hold F and hold that down to the floor. The pre-fire is Benja's in a post plant. 2 versus 1 versus 1, and around we go. Rise either side with the scrappier gun. He's looking for the take, looking for the body, and looking for some semblance of a sliver here of Benja out of grenades, and a gun that you said should be able to win these kind of engagements. He has the distance and doesn't pull the trigger.
New versus old, and old prevails. Wolves up 6 and 3 in G2. It's looking dire on these attacks.
Whoa. There's a bit of a fight, a bit of excitement, and a bit of us on the edge of this map. 3 rounds in a row, 3 rounds. The separation to pull us to OT. Here on the first map, Wolves, can they lock it out?
Staff and open area are going to be the final site, potentially, that we head into. Wolves, of course, working through the full selection here. I think we've seen Rise be pretty energetic during the group stage, but Mowgli is on a level today.
I mean,
not just in the server as well, but
no, but
voice.
It's a level you need. It's the energy, as you said. Some players, they're online players. Some players are main stage players. And some players don't know it until they get there. Mowgli might be one of them.
It's unreal, really. I know across the world, I just look back at some of the new players we've seen come into the game over the last 12 months, and I think it was maybe 6 months ago when we were doing APAC North and EUL, we were saying, you know, there's probably in each region 3 or 4 players that have come through. I think about like Mephi, for example, over in APAC. We've seen players like Nuas light up the night sky, it feels. Mowgli's done the same, Benja's done the same. Just so many young gunners with such talent coming in that on a day like this, when one's shining and one isn't, you can see the impact in the game.
Closing things out, a guide that wasn't written by Wolves. No. And that's the difference now, is you can talk about mentality, you can talk about fire in the round, but we always have to harp on about the pressures of the end of the game. The 2 hardest rounds are your very first and maybe your very last. and they just need to be able to slip the distance. Alamau coming up underneath, doesn't have the kit, but does have an idea on a hatch. They are going right towards a site where no one's in, but Benja gets locked down from the back end. The slightly off-center hold gets back with Virtue getting some cover, but Bibu has Blur. And Alamau, that's a nice shotgun, but you're a little bit out of range of anybody. Doki slips his way around the corner, but nobody's there. They're looking and knocking on doors, but the French have moved to a different location, and the only thing they're taking is the bank.
Taking all the money to the bank as well. What a statement from Wolves in map 1. G2 unable to really do anything, and even in a round where they tried something a little offhand, could not find the answer they needed. A lack of droning really punished them in the last round, and not a single attack on their side. I mean, I think really shows that Fabian's going to be having some stern words in the break.
I mean, he's had those conversations with world-beating teams before, and he's had them on dire circumstances than this. But he's got to go back to that I haven't shattered in 6-month bag and maybe pull out some of his favorite Fabianisms.
What I really loved was when I was speaking to Pengu the other day, he was like, that's the Fabian I remember. When stuff really has got to be done, that is when he makes himself heard. But G2 have got it all to figure out in the break. Wolves one map away from progressing with such a dominant performance here on Bank. Skyscraper comes up next. We'll see you after a break.
I'm Nicholas Mortensen, but you know me as Pingu. I'm a 2-time Rainbow Six Siege World Champion and former top Rainbow Six Siege player in Pro League. Welcome to my Siege Ranked Bootcamp. We're talking 20 seconds left on the clock, you got the diffuser in hand, what do? Play the way that you're comfortable with, because you have confidence when you're in this position. That is when you're gonna be at your very best. Good luck.
Welcome back, everybody. Map 1 is complete. And our French team, Wolves, will take the advantage. Even less people were expecting these teams to be here, but much less than that for Wolves to take the advantage in Map 1. We're here to break things down before we continue on with our second map. Hello, I'm Mr. Medic, your host. With me are Jesse and, of course, Mr. Fresh on the analyst desk. Let's start by recapping our map. Because overall, Bank, it can swing either way with how these two teams play, Jack.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought genuinely we saw a G2 performance on Bank that is akin to G2 performances that we've seen before. Nothing much changed. Where I was impressed was Wolves. Wolves came with such a specific game plan for G2 on Bank, particularly the pacing on the attacks and the defense. G2 were setting up the operators to play for a lot of executes, slow, pacing from Wolves, retakes, that type of stuff. Whereas Wolves, everything apart from the basement that they attacked was so fast-paced, and I think it completely caught G2 by surprise in that first half, and they were actually lucky to get away with a 3-3 split.
Yeah, and then we switch to defense, right? And Wolves just dominate the entirety of the map. They win all 4 defensive rounds in a row. They close it out easily for themselves. It feels like just a dominant performance from Wolves in that second half. And it's clear why they have that 7-map win streak, 8 now with this big win over G2. I think they're going to be very happy about starting SI with a win.
Shinka and B4 at the top of the board for Wolves. And it's great because they've taken a while to warm up through the groups and playoffs, and here they are on the main stage.
Yeah, that's something that we've seen them take a while to actually warm up through EUL, let alone this group, is that, there's only really been Mowgli and Bibu that was going positive up until today. So the fact that I'm seeing Shinka up there +3, P4 up there +5, that is a really good sign for Wolves.
So there have been key moments in this matchup for Wolves. Can we talk about those?
Yeah, I've got a little telestrator for Milosh.
Oh, you
of
just
course,
put it together, Jack.
I've always got a little telestrator for you. So the telestration that I'm going to have today is going to be about the pacing. Now, you all saw it. We all saw it because we was in the venue, and we just saw, oh, the plant's going down. It's 5v5. And I want to take you through exactly what happened. Now, the first thing to note is that Wolves used with Dokkaebi. Bibu is in ATMs, making a racket as Dokkaebi, making a call. Now, this is a great opportunity spot, and this is what I say about the Wolves team having studied G2. They've seen a hole, and that hole was rappelling in through the window into top square, dropping down and walking straight into tellers whilst the Dokkaebi call was going. I am fully believe that this is either Helby or Liloon has seen this as an opportunity spot through a VOD review. So what do? Well, Rise repels in, P4 repels in. They know that everybody from G2 is off-site. They're planting in a 5v5. This is absolutely excellent, and Bibu's use of the Dokkaebi calls is excellent as well. Uses one call for them to go in to mask that sound. As soon as the plant down, you can see now that second call is going to come through from Bibu. And at this point, you're now just playing a post-plant, and that is where Wolves actually, by only having 2 people inside of the building, you see Mowgli is holding the flank there from top blue, Bibu is in ATMs. They only had 2 people fighting the post-plant from the inside. And that was ultimately what undid G2 in that round. And this is why I say I do not believe that G2 were absolutely prepared for any game plan from Wolves whatsoever.
Thank you very much, Jackers. That was on Wolves, but G2 were trying to fight back in this, right, Jesse?
They were, Milosh, and if I may just step over to the telestrator as well.
Not to be outdone, of course.
Because I do think that there's something that G2 did well, particularly Virtue, and it's something that I want to see a little bit more in my ranked games. So I thought I'd show everybody here today. Now, we'll back this up a little bit. I think everybody kind of knows, of course, the classic castle strategy, right? Where you use a castle barricade to create a little wall of defense, right? Make sure that you can stay inside of this front office a little bit safer. You're covered from angles from the windows here. You're covered from angles from the windows here, right? But what Virtue does, he says, screw the castle. We can do this better. And what Virtue does is you can see already a Kiva barrier up on the lamp so that this first sightline does get blocked off. And it's a genius way to use that Kiva barrier to make sure that he's fully safe from that angle. It allows him to play not only inside the front office, but also in Banana itself. You see the second Kiva right here that protects him from the second window angle that we drew earlier. And of course, there's still the problem of Shinka on the windows. The last place you typically put castle barricades, right across here to keep you safe. Well, we've got keyboards for that as well. If we skip a little bit farther forward, you'll see them up on the top floor. There it is right there, of course. Keeping this players safe that want to play back inside of the long desk from these angles, as well as Virtue, of course, playing in that front office. And, well, does it work for him, right? He's keep him safe, but what does he do with that safety? Well, I'll tell you exactly what he does with that safety. He takes it all the way to the end of the round where he flanks down through square in the 1v2, stops the first planter with the kit, and then gets both kills, wins this round 1v2 with round 6 equalizing us 3-3. So I thought that was a fantastic little adaptation. Usually done with the castle, but of course you can do it with the zombie as well. And so please start using this in your ranked games.
It is beautiful to see the adaptation of our teams here and creating new, very detailed strategies for it. But that was only map 1 in our series, right? They're all best of 3s. We've seen it all throughout the tournament, but it continues now for one more. And our next is Skyscraper, which is a map, honestly, I'm very happy that we get to see more of it, but we're seeing a ton of it here at the Invitational versus the normal online leagues that we see outside of the main tournament. So why do we have a chat about that? I just want to show the picks and bans for everybody, just know exactly what could happen later on today with Oregon. Could be our decider. Skyscraper, Jack, what do you feel about that after seeing Bank?
So after seeing Bank, the one thing that I'm expecting and maybe hoping for, because we all knew this was coming, and you know, we had a good idea, Skyscraper. Wolves will have known if they leave Skyscraper open, G2 are going to pick it. After seeing map 1 and a lot of counter prep done on G2, that's what I'm looking for from Wolves, to see what holes that they can find in the VOD review that they've done from G2, because they knew it was coming. They haven't played well on it, particularly any time Wolves have played it. In theory, this should be a G2 map, but any counter analysis, fast pacing, a different Wolves that we've seen in Bank, if that rolls over into Skyscraper, we could be looking at a very explosive game.
Absolutely. It's important to remember G2 currently undefeated on this map at the 6th Invitational. That's through 2 games. First win was over Elevate. That was an 8-7 nail-biter in the group stage. And then over DZ in the playoff bracket, 7-1. So dominant wins from G2. Couple of plays from Wolves as well. 1-1 at the 6th Invitational so far.
Expectations now, because that map 1 was not as close as I wanted to see it. There's a lot of great plays from Wolves. That's unexpected, really.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you failed to attack on Bank, right? Bank is a very attacker-sided map for G2. They're now going to have to come into Skyscraper. I believe they're starting on attack. Jack, maybe you can back me up on that. Yes. It's a tougher map to attack by far, so we really need to see G2 stepping up their attacks. It's their pick. I expect they'll have that figured out, but of course, that's going to be the focus today.
I think that Fabian needed some stern words with them in that map 1, and you know, they were utter shell-shocked, and it's not what we expect. But like Jesse said, this is a map that they're comfortable on. This is a map that they know how to attack. It is a map that they know how to defend. A 3-3 split on the attack would be more than fine for them.
I want to ask, and let's final question because our game is ready. Map 3, yes or no?
Yes.
Of course.
Hey, how many people are here? Do you want to see map 3? Look, I think the verdict is clear. Will we see a map 3? That's up to our teams. Wolves versus G2 continues with our wonderful casters.
Thank you very much, Milos, once again. Imagine if the crowd had turned around and been like, nah, I don't want to map.
Nah, I'm all right with 2.
I've done it 2, man.
I've got a long
have a
day.
snowball fight,
I've got work to do.
Snow is crazy outside.
I mean, it was, when we were here yesterday for rehearsals, there was none. This is all in one night. Canada, what is going on?
It's a mad place, and there are mad games going on in the server as well. We've spoken a good few times already about just what this means to these 2 teams. For G2, it's now or never. I hope Fabian has shared some words of wisdom, because they've got to battle back into this one. One map stands between all them and the next flight back to Europe. Let's see if they can do it here on Skyscraper.
I mean, what you want from Fabian there is another everybody listening in, because he shouted that loud.
Yes.
Like, he needs to drill it into the boys. He needs to give them the idea of what needs to be done here, which is, this is our map, let's prove it. They just had the other hand of that. They were just shown it, but we had this yesterday. We had this in series that we saw at most recent play day, where sometimes, if it's...
Okay.
Sometimes their map's their map. G2, making things uncomfy.
This is interesting because it's not really a Wolves map, so I feel like you're trying to push towards a target ban almost here, will make things a bit strange. I see a Thermite ban come through, and I think about the main focus on Geisha Wall that we see so many teams using the Thermite for. I think it means you are going to see the ace being brought along in basically every single round here for getting the jobs done that a Thermite might otherwise do. Hibana just a little bit too focused there with the X-Kairos. Obviously not as big a hold, requires quite a bit more of the charges to get done, so ace is just generally quite a safe bet. Thinking about it, it was quite an interesting chat I was having with Doki the other day as well when I asked him, you know, okay, how is Fabian as a coach? And he was saying, you know, in a way when we brought Fabian in, we didn't need him to tell us how to play. And I kind of gave him that look of, are you sure? And he was like, no, seriously. Like, obviously he'll give us some ideas that we can use, but he's there to maintain discipline. He's there to motivate us. That's what he's there for. Rather than to be a micro gameplay coach. So, again, you will have seen those words coming out of him during the break, and hopefully it is enough. G2 start on the attack inside. Let's see if we have 5 players playing as a team and not 5 players just running around like we saw at times on Bank.
Discipline, discipline, discipline.
Yes.
Mr. Fabian is
He likes his discipline.
Oh, yeah, we worked
loves
with
his
him
discipline.
for a while. We've seen him shout.
Oh, yes.
More than maybe, more than others. But no, it's what they needed. You didn't need us, you didn't need them, you didn't need anyone to say other than that's what was always lacking from G2. And as you sort of put it before, that G2 we saw on that map felt like pre-Fabian G2. Felt like a G2 that was just a little bit loosey-goosey. G2, as you said, on the attack, see if they can get 3 for a half, see if they can start with a bang, and the bang might be built behind Blur on Ossa.
Okay, this could actually be a pretty fast push coming in here as well, so they've got a couple stacked up on the window. Thought we might see a bit of a faster move in, but nope. Blur is going to be the focal point of this round. Imagine you'll see him starting to work things out more towards Shrine Balcony and work his way in from there. Plays on the window here on the Ossa, also not a bad shout on the Repel, for example, looking in towards Karaoke itself. But already based on where you can see the outlines of these G2 players, the goal is no doubt going to be taking control of Shrine Balcony, getting in top black and looking for a plant inside of Karaoke.
We start to hear the whir and the whiz of all of the pressure and control on the players. They're looking for the hunt, and the hunt is Bibu's. Takes care of the first. Bibu is removing Benja, getting some of that control underneath the site. You can see that, as you said, there's pressure onto black. There's a refrag under. Doki drove himself round, got a bit of revenge. You've got the trader for the Solace, and she will be more impactful holding onto these map and these sites. Think of all the soft, think of the plant play, and think of what could be done against it.
You know, Doki's trying to see what he can get done downstairs on the hunt. You know, once again, it's Benja taking away the nades with him as well. That's not ideal on this map. So much soft flooring that can unsettle the defenders. The Geisha inside of Karaoke. Let's make this one count, which I think it simply is not going to unless it goes a bit deeper. It is not. And that is all the fishing that G2 can do in this round.
Yeah, losing obviously Benja underneath, who has been an absolute wizard with those. It means that the pressure has to come elsewhere. They open up the top black. They're making sure that once upon a time it was a rotate, but I'm not sure if that truly popped off. There was an impact.
It did get it, no,
halfway through. No, yeah, it's connected. They're on the top black. The Talon shield is going to creep its way around. They're trying to find themselves all the way across. They have the rotate angle and they have the deployment. They have to make sure that they can try and stop this. No time. They rotate themselves closer. The impact doesn't go far enough. There's 3 kills. Suddenly, Shinka, all alone, doesn't really have much in the
He's against
pockets.
4 though, Emmy.
I mean, he did it before. It's that worry, the smoke. A little too late, but what else can he do?
He's got a player on window here as well. The chance he wins this one out is going to be absolutely ludicrous. He's trying to fight his way up black stairs where there are 2 players from G2 just ready and waiting. Gets one gone. A much better team-driven round from G2. 4 players focusing around Karaoke and top black and giving them the control they needed. Once the plant was inside, I think that's when Wolves were panicked a little bit, like, oh God, we can't stop him. We have to push now. But G2 had the crossfires ready.
It was G2, it was almost like, oh, there you are. After that first map, you want an appearance. You want teams to hit their stride, and it was clean, it was concise, it was all of the players. They were in a position to trade out the loss underneath as well. They had themselves with their heads in this game. And if that's the difference of, as sort of Jack said, this is them on Sky versus that was them on Bank, fair enough. But I still think you got to make sure that you don't just win the map, you've got to lock Wolves out of it.
100% Kitchen and Barbecue, they're not normally the go-to second site. Exhibition normally comes in as the pick, or potentially even a repick of Karaoke and T, but maybe Wolves just acknowledging there in that first round already, look, G2 have got answers. It's their map. They know how to attack into the primary site that every team plays. What if we go to one that feels a little bit less ordinary and force them to have to work through more steps? Because Kitchen and Barbecue often plays out similar to maps like Reading and Fireplace on Cafe. You have to work your way through the top floor first, clear out any would-be roamers, get map control, then you start looking for the control below on site, and then you can try and make a plan happen.
I mean, if I'm stepping in for Tim today whilst he's a bit ill, I've got to bring some Timisms. Maybe they're just hungry, mate. I see him on stage and they're hungry for a win.
And the only winner is the viewer in that situation.
And the only winner is the viewer. Doki. He's starting the approach underneath. We saw him have a couple of scrappy engagements on Bank. He wasn't quite able to make the full use of the guns the way he has throughout this tournament so far. So, can he step back in with a little bit more panache? Oh, what are you doing?
Yep. He's fancying it. Sees the foot. I don't know if he saw the foot on the other side of this one as well. P4 being pushed by 2 or 3 players. They get in and get 2 kills. It's a fast plant from G2, catching Wolves on the back foot. It's down to a 3 versus 3 though. Top control being established. They've got the hatch, but it's too late because the plant is down and G2 still have the numbers advantage. Rise back 1 into a 2 versus 2 as Bibu gets 1 more. Virtue 4 and 0 on the map has got to hold it all down.
He's got it from range. They're trying to find the player. They don't know if it's the window. They don't know if it's the door, but it's the swing round, the smoke. They're just trying to force him far away. The flash, the ping of the E1D.
He's got to go.
He's got to move. You've got to get yourself into the fight. The calls are there. The pressure. He cannot connect. A sneaky plant and a sneaky defusal. A good play of the canisters to buy the space. The cover of the audio, massively important there. And a bit too late to put the pressure on.
Bibu doing enough to body block there as well, I think. You know, it was, for a second, looked like he was going to get hit through the remaining soft wall. Half of it was reinforced off, but they just about managed to make it work out. Looking real scrappy, but G2 almost completely catching Wolves off guard. And I wouldn't be shocked if they'd seen the hatch in Geisha still closed and said, oh, they haven't got hatch control. No one's playing hatch. We're safe to go in the window here and just go and hit site. It was, again, a really good team-based execute, just couldn't hold on to the bitter end.
I mean, it's something you've always got to realize and compare as well, is what did we see on the rush plant attempt from G2 on the previous map? Not good. Their last take was pretty much a lost attempt where they didn't even really have any idea of where the players of Wolves were. This time they made sure that was a lead in. They were still winning fights. They're 50-50s. You never quite know if one player is going to have that impact, and it's much more likely in that situation. It was a good read and response there from Wolves, but it's still a bit of a warning knock on the door.
Karaoke and T for round number 3. No Ossa on side this time round. G2 feel they've kind of played that card already, and that Wolves may well spot a repeat if it is on the way. So here they're going back to a much more conventional kind of lineup. Once again, they're looking to do some fishing with those 4 frag grenades in the back pocket of Alamau and Doki. I think it was Benja previously playing on the Nook who found himself taken out, and maybe with the, I don't want to say the Not's confidence, but clearly him having a quiet day, want to put Alamau on that duty instead. Bibu, the one looking to stop them though.
Can they get the hunt down on the Solus? Obviously, if anyone knows the pressure's coming from drones and intel, it will be them. It becomes problematic because you can never really surprise one that's playing with a good read-through. Alamau's doing his best, but the gadget would get spotted by a Solus. You've always got that awareness now. There's no such thing as an even fight against someone who's perpetually watching. And it's always that little shy away, buried underneath a similar location to where he was before. He's still got some confidence. He rotates his way back down towards the windows. Things are still closed, and he's buying and breaking time here.
Again, a little bit of play coming out from G2 here with, I think it's Blur, probably knows. Benja sat on the drones this time around, trying to drone Alamau through, who's now going to rotate away. I think not wanting to try and establish control of Sushi on the downstairs. They've already got a foothold on the upstairs with 2 or 3 players working in. So trying to sweep across from east across to west rather than trying to strictly work in from below seems to be the game plan.
Now, this is the great divide, the most standard take and attack for this that you'll see generally with the changes towards the top of Black and how teams hold is breaking down across Dragon, putting the pressure onto Drum, trying to clear themselves around Gold, and then going at Geisha at the same time. There's still the pressure. As I said, Solus, you're thinking of so much soft floor, you're thinking of not a huge amount of places to hop your way up for safety. They have to be aware of this and they have to lock it down. Alamau just leads in. Gets entirely picked apart. Bibu, right place, right time, and this time there isn't a quick response. Doki is underneath. Benja moves his way across. Doki's in a scrappy fight around the prep line on the back end. They meet an electric wall, and he can't get out the door. Mowgli's there offering Bibu some support that was not there before.
And that gives them the downstairs control. They've got a C4 in back pocket for Mowgli to make it happen. Not like it's needed here, because Wolves are deleting the side of G2 when it comes to gunfights. Only Blur and Virtue, the two backline players left standing to face off against 4. P4 gets a kill through a full white flash. Virtue left alone. We've seen this one before, Emmy, but I don't think even he can do it against the onslaught of Wolves here. 3 left standing. No, he cannot. Wolves take round 3, and it's looking exactly the same as Bank, with Wolves taking a 2-1 start in the first 3 rounds.
It was very well put together there. The changes, obviously, it was a different attack. There you go. How dare you?
I'm the coach. Don't you dare.
How dare you do that to Liloon?
Liloon's wrath will follow.
Yeah, but it was the adaptations. I like that Mowgli came down to offer support. Remember last time, sure, Bibu got the first, but because of the amount of players there, he was picked apart from behind. They had a support line for him. They had the bottom. They really sort of gave an idea of we're going to fight over here, but the take from G2 just couldn't find the hole on the approach.
It started strong in round 1, when I feel like G2 had an agreed strategy to play behind the Ossa, to put everything behind that plan. It worked well. But in that round then again, things just felt a little bit solo bolo, you know? You had Alamau on the downstairs by himself. He got in initially, rotated out the building, came back in, got picked up for free. Doki was a similar story. They never got to use the utility they brought in the round, the 4 grenades, to really make an impact, because there was no team effort to get control of downstairs to begin with. Wolves for me at the minute look far more like a team playing together. G2, even with the break between this map and the previous one, haven't quite got that online. I wouldn't be shocked if after the next round, assuming G2 lose it, Fabian steps in for one of those famous team talks.
It's also that sort of factor of, if you're playing behind Ossa, if you're playing behind Monty, if you're playing behind something that is unique to a push, the push has to be coordinated. It forces a team's hand in terms of, well, I can't stray too much. It's like leashing the players via strategy. And when that starts to go a little bit awry is when we see G2 go a little bit awry. Here, yeah, that's pretty standard. The wall is currently open. They can try and impact back against it. They can try and put pressure back against it. It means breaching it's much trickier. They start here.
Gotta be careful.
On the opposite end, but entirely that. You know, how many times have we seen teams, including G2, just shoot out of it?
The thing is, you got away with it the first time, and I think on the defensive side, they're looking for some impact tricking. You got Valkyrie, for example, ready to start tossing them out when it comes round to it, but not in position, and Doki will get this wall opened up.
He's not sure just where the fight's coming from, but Alamau is. Wins out against the first. P4's got the chassis for support on one side. If he gets picked out, it'll be a risky fight to take, but does Doki know? That's the trade-off. That's the moment right now, is there's nothing forcing P4 to move. He can sit and wait as long as nothing's coming up underneath him from the hatch or any intel puts him on a pressure position. He's not safe, but for now, he feels it.
Well, this is the thing. I was going to comment on this before we just got shown that overhead by the observers. Really, there's only one player playing outside of sight right now for Wolves, and that's the one that's playing at top shrine.
Oh.
Rise going quite aggressive, looking to get a bit cheeky. A couple more steps, and he might just find the player, sees him. But the MPX is a bit of a pea shooter. Can't finish player off, and he gets away with that one quite lucky. And there's Alamau for the step back in.
I mean, he found himself against the locked soft door. I think he thought that was an escape route. Unfortunately, he had forgotten what the board said. A 5 versus 3. They have loads of time.
They do. They did well. They found Mowgli early, right? And Rise has then gone a bit over-aggressive by himself, trying to be a bit of a backstab. Bibu finds one back, but again, you know, there's 2 players on site, with Bibu currently off the one looking to contest and be the, oh, hey, you need to drone me, you've got to come clear Dragon. G2 have been sat here now for 1 minute and 20. Dragon is still Wolves' control.
And that's the thing here. This is the problem with G2. They're forcing motions, they're forcing abilities, they're trying to drive themselves through. Bibu is forced further and further back. Shinka, he's moved into the dead space where P4 was. He starts trying to hit the hammer home, but a very quick trade. Back on from Benja, Bibu. He's the last French statement, a 2 versus 1. They have one more! A 1 versus 1, and it is a Bibu round!
Fabian is gonna be furious. What a play by Bibu, though, working his way back into sight. We mentioned that he hadn't been droned and forced away from playing around Shrine. I think G2 is getting a little bit too assumptive in these rounds that areas of the map are clear without checking it, and they are leaving room for the members of Wolves to work their way back into this game. G2 in attack timeout, and I can see from here, Fabian looks pretty livid.
I mean, understandably.
Very understandably.
It's the second one over this period of time. Bibu, he's working on intel, and it's a great gun. Have a look at the faces on the players. The bald boo buff.
I can't help but again pull back to, for Benja having a real rough series here. I think he's got 3 or 4 kills to his name across the 2 maps, and it's not about one player. For G2, it's been the maps. I keep on saying it, they keep playing individually. They aren't droning things out. We saw it in one of the earlier rounds on this exact map with the kitchen execute. Things weren't necessarily, fully droned out or understood where players were. We saw it in the last round of Bank. We've just seen it again, where Bibu has been able to get a 4K. I think that's now 5 clutches across this series, by the way, for Wolves.
Yeah.
It's a little bit silly, but when a team is this motivated and on their game on the day, you have to find a response, and so far, G2 simply do not have one.
It's like one of the things said about Astralis is you can never tell Astralis when a round is over.
No.
They're just going to play it to the end, play it to the teeth. And that is what Wolves are doing. They have that mentality. They have that idea of every single round is possible. Do not tell me the odds. The odds are stacked more and more in their favor. It doesn't matter how close the round is at the end of the day. It's who takes the round is the scoreboard driver. It's 3-1. And there's all the woulda, coulda, shoulda. But if you can't, then you can't. And you have to move on. You have to try and piece that back together. That could be the last team talk they'll be able to have throughout this entire tournament.
Yes, unless Wolves really, start feeling the burn from G2 now, and it's Wolves who take their first tap time out of the series. But obviously right now, when you're up 3-1, there is zero need to do that. I don't imagine we'd see one until the second half anyway, because Wolves know they've got G2 on the back foot. Here we go with a little focus and a lucky bounce off the door as well. Bit of a burnt nade there from Doki, going to get nothing done. Second one comes through and door is now finally opened. We are, of course, attaching in towards kitchen and barbecue. And Benja with it sounds cruel, but an uncharacteristic entry against Mowgli.
I mean, they need it. They need that little bit of magic. They need that little bit of energy. I cannot imagine how hard it is to step up onto this and play. And
there he is, Benny boy.
Removed the man of the previous moment, and suddenly Benja has some of this control. Remember how little they had last time because they went for that rush plant and the vertical cost them Benja!
Oh, Benja!
Well, Fabian has slapped a bit of energy. Can he go for the 4th? They don't even want to risk it. Shinka, he pulls himself out of there, but Benja isn't ready to let this fight go away from him. Please, I'm hungry, and Alamau says, don't worry. I'm happy to have the bite on the side myself. Shinka, well, we've had...
No throw, boys, no throw.
Please, G2.
They've got to know where he is as well. There we go! Wow! What an answer by Benja, by the way. 4K in the round? It's like he heard us.
I mean, he's doubled his kills from the whole series.
in one round. In one single round.
And that's the sort of thing is, that G2 attack, what we've just seen there, that's how they can attack this map. That's them with everything going to plan. That's them almost doing it, not in this room, but in the back, in a scrim, in a practice, in a prep, where there's no eyes on them. And they need to get that mentality. They need to almost shake off the weight of this room. Sorry, everyone here. And pretend none of you exist.
I think actually it was Blur that got the final one from the upstairs, but who's counting? Still a big round overall for G2. It is a flawless round, one that Wolves will put in the back of their memory and right off. If they let G2 back into this at 3-3, they will be kicking themselves. They must have felt like they've been the better team across the series. When it comes to team play, gunmanship, everything has looked stronger. But if G2 can battle back in here, what a series that'll set us up for.
All right, G2, we're back to plan B-ish. We've got some of the catch, some of the chance at finding the players underneath. You've got some of the eyes and ideas on it as well. No Ossa, no Tuck, Black take. You can still put the pressure there, but I still think a lead-in game is going to be the most important step here. How do you find Bibu loose last time round? How do you see if the support is there from Mowgli? And what do you do if things start to slip away?
Well, their answer here is going to be repeat what happened last time around and pray that you don't fall away. For the side of Wolves, though, obviously, we've said it for a number of times, they have been winning out in these gunfights so far. It's kind of what I said earlier on about teams being, 50% below or 50% above on a given day. On Bank, Wolves were that team that were 50% ahead. At least in that last round, you're starting to see Benja become on that right side of 100 as well, starting to really push the envelope for his team.
Ooh, it's a little bit of a pressure situation here, Mowgli.
It was a Benja 4K, by the way, my bad.
All right,
Benja, let's
holding
go.
on, but Benja's almost the first off the board, but it's the swing from Alamau. He's gone even deeper and somehow escapes Rise. You can see it on his face. He's kicking himself for not quite getting that trade back. It was a very risky maneuver for just the camera there, mate. And it hasn't cost him. I know, that's it.
They're so stacked up around top red right now as well, looking to cause a little bit of bother. But for G2, they've backed away. They said, look, if you want to push really aggressively into this, so be it. Wolves have now spread out at least a little bit more, but you've got one, for example, on Shrine, one just inside top red doorway, one below Drum. They are trying to stop G2 getting across from this east side here without directly contesting it.
That's it. A smoke canister gets thrown through. They can see the drones. They know that there's the whiff of pressure, but with the Solus underneath, you still got to deal with that problem. It's something that is always going to harp on, and it seems like that's the rotate. The idea, Virtue's going to go hunting. They have a grenade, and they have a ping on Rise, holding a very aggressive position. He has to know there's danger coming through, and he has to know it's now focused on him to drop the fight over the Dragon stairs from bottom to top. There's pressure coming on the window, and there's Shinka getting one out. Virtue's now rotated his way around to the top of Black on the back end. He's trying to draw the players away. There's a fight for Benja's side. Shinka's gone, a bit of revenge. A scrappy one on the top of Black stairs. Bibu, he's trying to make things feel bad for G2 on this approach, that it can't be that comfortable.
Yeah, Benja's been sat on the window looking inside a site for the longest time, just waiting for members of the defense to move around. Alamau is feeling himself a little bit as well. Bibu does get a trade, but it's down to a numbers advantage for G2, and assuming we don't see what we've seen so many times this year.
I know, it's like
we could have that 3-3 half.
Assuming we don't see it again and again
and again
and again.
And again.
They have 30 seconds. They have themselves a little bit spread out. Bibu is dancing from stair set to stair set. How aware are they? A little bit, but look at the damage done to Virtue there. It will not take much to get rid of Virtue and Benja at this point, and you've got to try and slip your way past the watch on the back end. And again, time. Cannot mention it enough. Time, the combination of the player underneath. They've got to try and find themselves. There he is on the hunt for the diffuser. There he is waiting for the time. There he is spraying and getting the drop down. There's only a pocket full of seconds left. Can they even get it in time? He's just got to hold F. It's a trade out. It is a Bibu Solus underneath looking for the player. Benja, he's gone!
And again.
And again.
And again.
And you know how many times you say it. You talk about that. You talk about Solus. You talk about the importance. They know it. They tried to hunt it down twice before. The only safe place to plant in the entire setup of those two sites is on gold table.
Yeah.
They didn't drive for the fight there, so they have to drive for the fight on the Solus. You can't just assume that she's not paying attention, because it's Bibu, and at the start of the round, he was 7-2.
He's got 3 kills in that round, right? At least the one that he came up on red stairs, and they managed to collect 2 more as well. Like, he's made it look, you know, easy. He's been given so much movement there in the close, despite having the numbers advantage for G2. But it again comes back to what you were saying. Think back to the early rounds, and we were saying, look, Bibu's been left downstairs. Alamal's kind of contested him and died. They've got no vertical control. They can't go fishing with their grenades. It's frustrating because you know G2 can play for that team level of play where it means they get to clear areas out of the map together. But they're keeping it kind of at step 1 here. Yep. Focusing on shrine control, for example, or looking to set up a kitchen, but ignoring what's happening on the vertical axis above them or below them.
It makes it awkward because they even drove the fight. And you've got to think about the context of things there is they went to try and take the fight on gold as the timer pretty much ticked out. But it didn't matter. Even if they won that clean, it did not matter. They wouldn't have been able to still win that round based on what was still up. And it's those decisions, the time it seems to be taking G2 to reach them is costing them round after round after round.
After another round.
After.
We'll just carry on. Here we go then. Wolves move on to the attacking side of the map and get to show us their fangs and how much quicker they can be than G2. We commended their pinch play on the previous map of Bank. Very good at isolating players and forcing 2v1s, and G2 played into it for them as well. It was like playing with their food at that point. I think you may well wind up seeing a lot more here. I know it's not their map pick, but given the theme we've seen across 2 halves of defense, 1 half of attack for Wolves, you can see it really starting to become a trend.
It's pacey. And that's sort of those little moments where you go, maybe Wolves are happy attacking this. This was always the big question mark on this showdown and this map, is how confident will Wolves be? We know what G2's game is like. We know what G2 does on Bank as well, and it's not the greatest, but they can do it. Here on Sky, as Fresh has sort of pointed out, it was one of their consistent bans. It was one of their removals for a long time, and regardless of how far ahead you are, if you're not feeling confident, this can be a very sticky map to try and attack and approach.
Couple playing upstairs at the minute, I think. 1 inside of T, 1 holding up in Geisha, 3 around site itself for G2, but currently more proximity off Heavy drone game from Wolves coming in at the top of red as well, just to feed this information in for P4 to take the ground that he needs. And the funny thing is, I mean, we said at the start of the series, if P4 is quiet, this could be really rough, but as it stands so far, you're seeing all the work being done by Bibu. A lot of the strength in this team is that, okay, you don't need the 2 engines to shine when you've got Shinka who can clutch up for fun, Rise who can pop off an equal measure, and Bibu, as we've seen a number of times, especially in Stage 3, is the highest rated player. All of them can pop.
Wolves have set themselves up around and they're starting to execute. They're looking for a first engagement. The bounce of the nades, the pressure onto Doki actually catches the tail end of Blur through the soft wall. The grenade was close enough. They have the pings on the player. They know he's down and they're just going to cement it elsewhere. In the meantime, Rise goes. Mowgli is able to put some damage into Gold itself with Bibu finding the end of Alamau. So Blur still down and he is so far from recoverable. Doki has to fight his way out. Puts us in a tricky situation. They still haven't been able to cement the pick back up here. They haven't been able to cement the kill either, because Virtue's making things happen. Wolves, they tried to collapse, but they couldn't quite make it happen.
It's a 2vx. You'll forgive me for being nervous for G2 in this scenario as well. Yeah. After this series, I honestly don't know what to believe anymore about number disadvantages. The only thing really helping G2 here is the clock. The hatch is being held. They've got 1 or 2 playing at distance as well. They look ready for this step in. They find one. There's just one left. Bibu will get a kill, but it feels too little too late. Has got a Gumine in the foot, a plant in hand. There is nothing he can do. G2 will take round 7.
They hold off. But you have to sort of look at that round and you have to think how much of it was down to winning engagement, something they didn't really have before. Wolves did drift into a couple of the fights, but they also got lucky with a couple of them too. There was some missed moments. You can never forget about that. Here, Wolves went for the 2-story collapse at the same time. They had the pressure coming up here with Shinka on the back end. They tried to win the fight over the top of Gold, of Drum, of the main stairs itself. And some of those went away. The work done by Virtue, the control of the second story is the only reason the first did not fall.
See how round number 8 goes down then. Wolves now attacking in towards Karaoke and T up here on the top floor. But the 2 Funky coming out in their selected lineup for the operators as well. Again, we saw the offset execute coming out of G2, which was fantastic. We've seen teams play a lot of Monty on this site as well for the exact same purpose. Is it just gives you coverage from the very difficult long-range angles out towards Shrine, down towards Red Stairs, can really, really help you out. But no massive changes coming in outside of a couple of changes to who is playing what. I'd love to know the reason for this as well, why P4 is going from Ashe onto Iana, Mowgli from Iana onto the Ashe. Main reason being I can think of is, again, the nades from below. We spoke about G2 going fishing, and they want Mowgli to be the one who's not having to pick up that duty. They want him being a little bit more busy by himself on the Ashe.
It's like the trade-off, is you're thinking, well, it's not about the guns and it's not about the drive here. It's more about what they want to try and accomplish.
What the players want to do,
Yeah. And if you've got Mowgli potentially trying to hit heads against bulletproofs and shields in the far end, then, well, you can do it with a grenade, but it's kind of easier to get the swing round and a bit less dangerous to do it with the pop of the gadget of Ashe. Vice versa, as you said, the grenades underneath, it's a big part of the play here, potentially. You're looking at a hard wall, you're looking at control of maybe that wall and getting rid of, if there is a mute jammers, if there is electrics, you know, it's that sort of trade-off.
G2 playing quite deep out into the map here as well, quite far out from site itself. Still got hold of Exhibition, but have to be careful, because we've said before, walls can be very good at shutting the jaws. Snap down onto your neck, and they've caught 2 players, G2, overhanging and being punished.
I mean, Mowgli, he's feeling this round. He hasn't quite been able to have the same drive in throughout this, but with Blur shutting him down from the range, again, we're seeing this a little bit more on this map. From what was an entirely solid idea of where G2 were on the previous one, what they had for breakfast and where they wanted to be, here, there's little sparks of that, but not quite the full read. Virtue, he steps in and gets locked out. He's trying to buy Alamau the break back through. He gets 1 rip and tear, but think about where he is. Think about where the site is, and think about how many people are left. If Alamau gets caught out, it's a 1 versus X, and they're really far away from any support right now. A slow.
Doubled up.
Yeah, they might be able to get the player back up. You have to slip your way across. If they've gone undroned, it's dangerous. If they've gone droned, it's bait.
I think they're trying to hold for it here, but Blur has been an anchor around Drum. He's found a few kills from this angle so far in the game. A call coming out will give the indication they need. They just know, G2 just know that if they go for Virtue, there's a very good chance that someone's waiting, holding an angle. It is Shinka, daring him to cross. They might just have to let him go here. He makes the run, gets sprayed down, but not taken out. Down to a slither of HP. Blur's here for the cover as well. Good team play. Yes, Blur. That's what you want to see. A big 3K coming out, and G2 finally seem to have unlocked that thing called team play, and a massive 4K out of Blur.
Bring it on, Blur. Main stage, you're not always the biggest mainstay name you find yourself screaming out, but if that player on that back end with that gun that is a surgeon's tool in the right hand can do the business. Think about his first 2 kills there. Through the same hold, the same angle of just watching people rotate, like shooting French fish in a Blur barrel.
A very big Blur barrel. It seems to be every kill came for the same spot, except this final little bit, and I was really happy to see that small bit of team play coming together. When he moves away from his anchor position down towards Drum, realizes actually our win condition right now isn't holding down Drum, it's making sure we've got 3 guns online and able to shoot. Great rotation over, and again, G2 looking like they've really started to get things back together. A tactical timeout coming in. Liloon got a few words for the troops as G2 have brought the score even at 4-4.
It's time to have the talk. It's time to see if they can try and piece this together. As we said, this is Fabian's moment as well, and you know what he's seen these past couple of rounds, he's obviously much happier with. He couldn't have been sadder with what he saw before. And it's never a question of what rounds could they have won. That's something you can do in VOD reviews, you do after the game. You have to get into the mindset of this is what we're doing right now. It's 0-0.
Yeah.
We've pulled it back level. We're fighting for every single round.
And you got the defense.
And you got the defense.
Yes. I think really the big thing to focus on when you come to those tactical timeouts isn't the micro, the small, oh, you need to play better on this drone and do A, B, and C. No, it's much more about the macro. If the team aren't working together, not communicating what's got to change, you leave the players to figure it out in the server themselves what gameplay changes need to be made. Now, one thing I'll say, and I can say the same about Wolves, to be fair, there have been a lot of clutches in this game.
Yeah.
A lot of big 4Ks, a lot of big 3Ks, a lot of 1v1s being won. It is still quite tight, although Wolves generally have had a better control, especially when Bibu's sat on 12 and 3 so far on the map, going unbelievably strong. But you look over to that other side, and there's probably a blessing here that you've got Virtue, Blur, and Alamal all dropping big numbers, while Doki and Benja have been a little bit quieter, but the whole board is starting to come online.
I think that's the thing is, I would say Benja's stepped up in this map compared to the last one. He's found a bit of confidence. He's pretty much even. He's a little bit above, and Doki is the only one that slipped a bit further away. He's fishing. He's got a bite on the line, but it's not for his to have right now.
Sort of passing by, at least for now, but you know he can try and get a bit cheeky and just wait to see if there are a rotate that does come in on the upstairs. Mowgli just more securing things and making sure there's no horrible jump outs. That's an interesting one that he dropped down there, expecting someone to come vaulting over the edge of that balcony.
If anyone will, Alaba will.
They'll have seen G2 do this as well. There's probably a very specific reason that's there. Doki strikes me as the kind of player that would make a play like that, so I do not fault them at all.
G2, a couple of rounds, you've been able to pull yourself together, but still far from over, and you know this just as well as they do.
Retreat their way back up there as well into house. You know, feel the pressure starting to come in on the downstairs and don't want anything to do with it.
You don't want to hand them freebies.
No.
You don't want to hand them those engagements far away, because we've seen Wolves do very excellent pinches and pincers. They know how to try and force a player into another player's gun. And it seems like G2 have had much more sort of respect for that game and the fear of it.
Only a little nervous here for them because they have pulled back to site super early.
I think there is one loose player on the opposite end.
There's always one.
Here it is. There's the...
Is it? It's not Virtue, is it?
It's Doki. Doki, has he gone known? There's a slow swing around. Doki wins it out. Gets the lock in. There's a second player trying to make their way back over. Does he know? Oh, he does, but Mowgli gets one, and there it is. One of yours, two of ours.
That's one of the first times this series I've seen that triangle coming online that I was speaking about for G2 as well. Doki goes down, there is an immediate response. Think back to Bank top floor when Doki was left completely isolated and alone. It's a good bit of team play coming through, and they are punishing Wolves by making them realize we cannot leave players undroned and ignored.
Well, we've seen them do it before, and again, but that's not the moment right now. This is obviously Wolves with the timeout. This is Wolves thinking, well, things are slightly falling off. We have to try and pepper and fight our way back through their first of the series. In the 4 versus 3, what are they trying to shape up here? They've lost some of their lead in engagement. When we talked about what do you trade those operators for? Well, that utility's gone. Instead, it's got to be a direct drive. It's a swing round for Benja. Finds Bibu on the back end, and Shinker and Rise. Well, if the backline of Blur has been a big step up this map, it's time for them to see if they can step in. Knocked instantly out. Shinker all that's left, with 3 standing players in front of him and only 10 seconds. G2, please do not throw this.
They really don't need to do anything here as well. Shinker can't win it out. He hasn't got the time. And they just wait and let him come to them. Bibu made a play on Shrine. I don't blame him. They really needed some map control because the last two players were stuck looking at display, looking at the exhibition wall. It just was not an ideal spot for Wolves. And really on the back of this man, Doki killing one, drawing in another, giving Alamau a freebie, and that really unlocked things for G2.
That first fight reminds me of Doki playing Iana in the first map. It shouldn't have been Doki's win there. The P90 is a hell of a gun in the right hands, but he wasn't instant with the lock in there. It was scrappy. The Iana, from what we've seen previously, could have, should have won it.
Yeah.
And they didn't quite have that energy. And it's almost like Wolves are suffering the same thing, the same fear of the stage, the same fear of the map, more than anything, I would say, as G2. They've crept their way back into this one round at a time.
Again, it's one of them where if P4 was on fire today as well, Doki shut down there. They've got the numbers advantage. They're swinging around to pick up Alamau as well. The round probably goes the way of Wolves. So, again, G2 starting to believe here. You've got the vast majority of their players now all going positive in KD as well.
Do you believe yet, Mr. Dez?
On defense on their own map at 5 and 4, yeah, I think this goes to Oregon. I do think it goes all the way now. Sorry, all the way.
All the way, Dez. It won't
I
have
have to say, if we do get to...
Oh, I know.
You have to say it. It's,
I know.
think.
Anything for Tim. 5-4. G2, as I said, it's been around and around and around. They've tied 3 in a row.
Tell you what, this feels like a throwback. Ash and Zofia on the same side.
Yeah, I mean...
Feels like a thing from 3 years ago.
What year is this? Last time in Montreal.
2020, yeah, God.
You just don't see Zof too much. Obviously, we had some of the LMG Zofia, but Ash at that point was a bit behind the curve with, well, Finka with other LMGs. What are they trying to fix here? Are they trying to put some pressure around on the side? Do they think they know enough about where players are rough and they want to get a little bit more of that precise before they go for swings? I mean, the swings are happening quite early here.
It's the soft destruction, right? They've got so much of it on side, plus 6 sets of... It's a bit much. 6 Claymores plus a Nomad for me.
It's a lot.
A little bit much, especially
It's
when you
fear.
haven't... Yeah, you haven't seen G2 jumping out of windows and stuff, but this is where Wolves are saying, right, they're building in confidence here. We are expecting some aggression. We need to be careful about this. You can hear the air jabs as you run around the map here, just really trying to pen G2 in and just over the course of the round, shrink that box down more and more until they're stood on top of each other and it's an easy round win for Wolves. But that does require pace, and that's something that may be a little bit lacking here for the French side.
Hot droned in, Mowgli's trying to find the engagement. Last time he was putting the pressure upstairs and it didn't quite come together. So instead they've sort of picked him up, swapped him out with, I think it was P4, was here last and moved the grenades. Lean in with the guns. He was pretty sharp with it throughout this tournament. There's the start, the burn through, the shock, the destruction. There's no one close. They have the breach on the barb and they pull away. Also a different tact. Last time they went for, as I said, multiple different angles at the same time. It seems like they want to try and strong-arm it a little bit more with less as they're sort of rode in.
There's just so many Claymores and air jabs going down. Like, it's ludicrous. It feels like they're trying to build a web of Claymores that all connect to one another. It's at that sort of level. It isn't stopping Blur being quite a challenger here, though. On towards Kochek, sees one cross, but a little bit late to the punch.
Yeah, has to drop down. He's got the rotate out if he wants to it, but the first trade is over the back end. P4 can't get the cement. It's Doki with a double, and Bibu is able to get one on the back end, but he's still in the bar, and there he is! Pops up, pops them down! Blur gets the end of it. Doki said he wants to destroy him, and that round is the first bit we've seen from the Scotsman.
The first real big round coming out of Doki that we've seen throughout the entirety of groups and playoffs. Finally starting to come online. You know, I really feel the observers have done P4 dirty. They showed everything that went wrong there. He steps across, whiffs every single shot, has to reload, can't do anything, and Doki collects an absolute freebie onto him. You know, again, we do kind of like highlighting players and how they're underperforming, but for P4 there, Doki should be dead to rights every day of the week.
Fabian even kissed him on the head.
I just heard someone to the right of me just go, "Aw." It's a very loving moment, I'm sure. But again, they know that, you know, Fabian, we've seen some really interesting timeouts. We know that he's always on their side. He always is, because he knows what they can do, he knows what they can deliver, and he only expects the best.
Oh, he has never once said they're not the best team.
No.
When things are going wrong, when things are going right, you heard it in his timeouts. Like, on the back line, the statement that he kept on sort of prophesizing and putting down was, we showed people we can be the best team and we are the best team at this tournament. We just have to get to the end. you can't argue with the lower bracket run. You can't argue with the fact that they've dispatched a lot of people in this tournament. And sure, they might have been sent there by a certain team that they're in a map with right now, but this certain team might be another name on the big board of G2's victims.
Very possibly so. I mean, let's not write Wolves off just yet. Oregon does still awaiting for both teams. That is going to be a real spicy matchup. Very excited to see if, of course, we get there. Wolves still have a chance to battle their way back in. I know it's been quiet for most of their players on this map. Everyone except Bibu's currently going negative as well. But that's what you want from a stage when it comes around to being here live on a big stage, is to have a nice close fixture. At least as a fan, the players will take a 2-0 every day of the week.
About 40 seconds passed. It's slightly more cautious, the approach, but remember how many people died just drifting across this open space. They have to pay it a little bit more respect.
And they have.
And they have.
G2, like, remember last time round, Mowgli got a 2K by going in through single wall. G2 have back past Dragon, back past Shrine, back past Terrace. They're off towards sighting around Drum. Kind of fallen back to the second line of defense, but they've forced drones and utility out of wall. So a lot better from them now.
Yeah, it was a huge round for Blur as well. He was sort of happy to hold, but he was only probably holding that position because they lost so much else. Usually, Drum will be your sort of first gun. And Mowgli is the first gun for Wolves, and he's trying to see if anybody's home. Not a true reveal as of yet, but with the gate, with the bait, with the call, they'll know that it's coming sooner rather than later. You would hope G2's aware of this.
Yeah, I mean, they know that they were trying to push it on the east side, which means if they're committing resources towards getting Exhibition off its control, they'll then move across towards Drum. They'll then look to try and hit the site more laterally than trying to make a play, for example, and rotating everyone over towards Window or towards Top Black. You might see someone try and backstab up there that later in the round, but they haven't cleared downstairs. They have no information. That would be a massive risk for Wolves. So almost in a way here, G2 are predicting everything that's coming at them, and they've got the right idea because Wolves are playing quite tightly, like a pack of Wolves, quite ironically here, and trying to all come in as one.
Can they scream their way onto site? Gold is only really what stands. It's going to have to be the cover to stop a swing coming through in the smoke canister. Mowgli's just waiting. Doki is being droned out, but he knows if he stops to fight it, chances are there's going to be a gun right behind him. The break on the electrics pops off. They can get the wall open, and they can keep forcing space. There's 40 seconds left on the push, but look at how they're stacked up. G2, they've got to win these engagements either side. Virtue gets one, Blur with the second. Snap. That's it, the support structure, the pressure on the gold player, but suddenly they don't have those guns to drive themselves in. Rise gets one more. 20 seconds, though.
Absolutely snapping their ankles on the way through here. Virtue and Blur going absolutely nuclear. 10 and 4 for Virtue, and he seems to have that answer at every turn. Benja's there as well. Rise left standing but can do nothing. G2 take map 2, which means Oregon will be our final battlegrounds.
We knew they had the capabilities, they knew it just as well, and it was always going to be a fight across the board. This is one of the few times these two teams haven't gone to OT. Some loud words.
I didn't have to hear the volume from Alamal there to know exactly what words he was screaming at Wolves. I mentioned it earlier, they've been at each other's throats for days, they know. I just saw Doki in the back like, oh, shaking. Again, it's all about the mental game. You said it yesterday, screaming in the hotel, Bibu, we're coming for you. Two teams just back and forth against each other. I'm so excited to see what happens on that third map.
Well, there's only one map left for one of these two teams. Potentially, we will see who keeps moving on and who drops and disappears out of the board. Obviously, there's always the watching and the waiting of who they've got next. But there's the trade-off of, well, what do we have next, Des?
We have Oregon. And before that, a very quick break.
I'm Nicholas Mortensen, but you know me as Pingu. I'm a two-time Rainbow Six Siege World Champion and former top Rainbow Six Siege player in Pro League. Welcome to my Siege Ranked Bootcamp. We're talking 20 seconds left on the clock, you got the diffuser in hand, what do? Play the way that you're comfortable with, because you have confidence when you're in this position. That is when you're gonna be at your very best. Good luck.
Welcome back, friends, to Place Belle. Map 2 went the way of G2, and it guarantees the map 3. Turns out, if you have a crowd that screams for a map 3, some things can actually happen. We are back. I'm Melstametic, your host. And you're looking at the crowd here live. I'll have more as we go, of course, with our weekends. Great to be back here, now on the side of Jesse and Fresh. What a map! We had the comeback in Skyscraper, Jesse.
That we did, and another flawless second half. All defenses in a row going towards G2. 5 up and 5 completed for G2 on the defensive half. Really good defense on Skyscraper. We talked about how we were worried about their attacks on Bank, and they were okay, right? I mean, they got 2 rounds, but they turned it around on that defensive half.
I genuinely thought G2 were excellent in that game. I think strategically, out of the, 11 rounds played, I actually think they maybe won 9 or 10 of them. Yeah. Genuinely, you know, on their attacks, they lost 2 2v4s. They lost a couple of very unfortunate rounds, I think, where their pacing and their attack choice was wrong. as G2 come back to the stage. That's why you can hear the crowd behind me. But especially on the defense, I loved the defense from G2. It was completely focused on how slow they thought Wolves were going to be. I call it layering, where you're extending out. Let's say you're doing a T defense. You're extending out to Office, then you fall back to Dragon and Shrine, then you fall back into T, top black, Geisha. And on top of that, they were using traps to do that as well. And Wolves really had no answers for how they were going to penetrate those different layers. They didn't have a hero play. They didn't have a backstab. And G2 were just happy as Larry on the defense to just sit and wait and wait and wait. It was great.
Yeah, Jack, you call it layering, I call it hell. Legion, Capcan, Frost, Thorn, what are you supposed to do against this? This is the most annoying lineup to play against. And Wolves had to go against it almost every single round. I think particularly Doki on the Legion was the most effective of their trap operators, and it really did slow down the Wolves.
Is it surprising seeing an operator, for example, as Thorn, because you mentioned her?
Yeah.
We saw her in Bank, now we're seeing it on Skyscraper. It's an oddity outside of the usual meta pool.
I think you wouldn't be seeing it if G2 were going up against a Koi or a W7M. I think it was completely because they were going up against Wolves that they expected Wolves to be constantly doing the full clears, constantly taking their time, and then that's when the time value of those operators, particularly Legion and Fawn, comes into play.
Yeah, it's an operator that really can be explosive at times as well, right? The weaponry is very fast rate of fire, so Thorn definitely can be used well in the right hands. You know, JV92 had a big moment on it earlier in the playoffs. So you put the right person on Thorn, it can be extremely deadly.
So it seems like the issues that we saw in Bank from G2 were fixed up for Skyscraper. Looks like Fabian or anybody else has spoke in the back with the squad to pull them back into shape. And now the question turns to map 3. For those who missed the map, Vito, could we put it up on the screen just for them to see? Well, being nice and courteous and hoping we'll get the response. But it is, as you see, Oregon. So, surprises for this. We're going to a classic map. Much like Clubhouse, everybody knows how to play it at Oregon. Despite the changes, it's still the same map and how it plays out. So, Jack, what are your thoughts?
For me, there's a win condition, and that is the one bomb site, the basement bomb site, laundry and supply. Now, neither team, I've had a look back through the data, neither team is particularly good at attacking this. And so who starts attack in the third map, which is Wolves, is going to be setting the precedent. So Wolves, I'm looking at them to basically be increasing that pace. We saw them slow on Skyscraper. I want them to increase that pace again. We've seen it on Bank. For G2, you're just looking at trying to get those defenses under your belt and then capitalize by just having to win the tertiary site. Both teams like this map in this tournament. It feels like a very nice decider to go to.
Yeah, it's really funny, the parity between these two squads, right? Because back in Stage 2, both teams played it a ton. Wolves played it 6 times with a 5-1 record. G2 played it 3 times undefeated. Both teams loved it. Both kind of shied away more in Stage 3, and then this 6th Invitational, one play from G2, undefeated 1-0. That's a 4-game win streak, and then Wolves 1-1 here at the 6th Invitational as well. So kind of a throwback to Stage 2 for both of these squads.
Now, we're talking about a map 3 in the series. We're at Place Belle, of course, main event. But I want to just make sure it's very clear, crystal for everybody out there. Because the loser of this game is knocked out of the tournament. Just to keep it a $1.50, as people say for me. You win this map, you're through. If you lose, you are out. We still don't know, of course, who will be playing against the winner of this matchup. That'll be later on today, right after this game. But there's a lot of pressure on both of these squads, and maybe even more because this sets you up for the rest of the year. So, final thoughts on Oregon. How do we see, I guess, the setups, the compositions, the metagame work out?
I think the metagame, particularly for G2, is going to be that same layering approach that they took to Skyscraper, particularly on the basement, and then just try and win the tertiary sites by hook or by crook. Whether that's life rounds, the Legion, like you say, coming out from Doki, a life game from big game players. That's who you want to step up. Your Dokis, your Benja. I think for Wolves, I want to see that pacing from Bank. I really do, and I can't keep iterating this enough. When they were on Bank and they were fast and they were opportunity spotting, it looked great. When they were on Skyscraper and they were trying to play slow and play a team game, it didn't. So for me, the big question mark going into this is which Wolves are going to turn out on that attack. And I think we will know very clearly after 6 rounds who we think is going to be winning this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of pressure on Benja, you know, as it kind of has been throughout the series. Early on that map too, Benja was struggling. Fabian called that attack timeout. Immediately he hits a 3K. If Benja starts off really strong on this map, that could be the difference maker. So I'm looking to see what he can do, of course, alongside Doki and everybody else on G2. I still have faith in them. I'm going to pick G2 still, sticking to my guns from the very start of this pregame. But yeah, it's going to be a close one.
Jackers, you still sticking with Wolves?
Yeah, you make a decision, you stick with it, Milos.
Of course.
Of course.
And that's why I was not allowed to make a decision on this one. Jack, Jesse, thank you very much. Map 3 is ready to go. Our casters are in. Get it started, Des and Fluke.
Thank you very much, Milos. In we go for map 3. Oregon awaits, and as Fresh has been explaining, I know, nice.
That's cool.
You like it, huh? Yeah. As Fresh was saying on the desk, pretty even map for both sides. I can't give a prediction on this one. I think it's going to be really tight, down to the wire. They were saying you get the feeling of it in the first 6 rounds, so they think it's going to win. I don't think it's going to be that clear cut.
You don't want it to be clear cut.
No,
and
I
think
time.
that, analysts, what do they know? What do they know? They spend all their time behind a desk, unlike us, who spend all of our time behind a different desk. And we have the exciting idea of you want to fight. You always want to brawl. Teams have preferences and favorites in Oregon.
What? Okay. I mean,
all right.
Okay, now Wolves are banning the entire series. We mentioned this back on map 1. You're looking to really shut down the executes out of G2, where if you feel maybe they rely on the operator a bit too much, it's a good ban. The Amaru, though, is really, like,
I can hear the
out
audience has started doing that again.
Yeah, we had that in Berlin. It was very lovely.
Wait, unless it's a Tachanka. I remember Tachanka got banned in Berlin and everyone booed.
Understandable.
Understandable.
Completely understandable.
But yeah, Amaru, what are you thinking? Dorms. What are you thinking? Tower. That's about it. But Wolves do like those quick play plants. We've already seen one, almost 2 today.
Yeah, or like silly hatch hops, for example.
Yeah.
You get all kinds of crazy plays that come out from Amaru. It just seems to me like they're trying to work away some of the cheese that they might want to try and avoid. French cheese is pretty good, but...
They are, you could say, the masters of cheese. I mean, those plants, even the ones on like Villa or up through like Bank Hatch or stuff like that, I've always associated with French teams. I'm a little out of breath. The audience here got to see the fact that I had to run to the desk. It's almost...
So normally, break the fourth wall a bit. We have about 6 minutes for desks.
About 6
Which
minutes.
means we have to be here. And the good lady, Emmy, had to go to the bathroom, understandably.
Yeah.
And I had to message you on WhatsApp like, Emmy, I'm about to go live, where are you? And then I just see you burst around the corner.
I'm sorry you're not
like,
used...
full sprint.
Yeah.
Like,
You're not used to my unprofessionalism. You're used to Tim, who would be waiting for you.
Who is the exact... Yeah, exactly. Normally, I'm the chaotic one, and this is like a good bundle of chaos together.
Poor Tim.
Downstairs we go for our first round. G2, as you can see, are starting on the defensive side. A benefit I'm sure they'll be very happy with, because building that momentum in those first 6 rounds is going to be absolutely critical. Attacking side for Wolves, got to see them hit with some pace here as well. We saw in the second half of Skyscraper, things started to fall apart a little bit. It got a little bit too simplistic. They were missing out steps, the same way G2 were in the first half, admittedly, but got punished far harder by G2 for them.
Benja, hello.
Hi.
Goodbye, P4.
See ya.
I thought that was going to be potentially a confrontation here around Zulu or around the top, but he just blew him out of dorms. He sort of led in with a C4, said, welcome to map 3. My name's Benja Master. You might have seen my highlight reel from, I don't know, pretty much every single game I've played.
P4, as we've all said, a little bit lacking on that side. One player that is not, though, is Mowgli. That battle between those two we've spoken about so many times, and Alamar will be kicking himself for dying there. 3 smoke canisters offline, had the shotgun at the ready, but could not convert. Virtue, the next line of defense inside Freezer, realizes that they have pulled away. So G2 are left with 3 players on site here to hold off against the onslaught of Wolves, who still have 4.
I mean, credit there to Mowgli. That's what Mowgli do. Pushes his way around on, swings on it. He knows that there's been this pressure on the back end. He didn't expect 2 fights, but he didn't turn away from the second, and he's a player with the caliber to get that locked in. So, how do they work now? Obviously, they're missing a bit of their self-destruction, but they do still have some. They've got the Flores drones if they really are pressed for that range damage, and with the hatches starting to pop open, there's not really too much that's been specifically removed from Wolves and from their approach here. The break onto the Kivas and the fire, even. They're just buying themselves that safety of when push comes to shove.
I love that Kiva barricade, by the way.
Yeah.
Because normally that's the angle, the arc at which you have smokes coming in, you have flashes coming in, frag grenades coming in. Unless that gets cleared away by the Flores, which of course it'll be replaced not long after too, it means that utility can't be thrown. So it's a good little defensive advantage for G2 over something that looks so similar, so simple at first glance.
Pressure. above E-Box, above the hatch. They have the pings on the player holding onto Pillar, but they've got to try and work together to get him locked out. There's a Keeper barricade that's just come down very close towards the default door. And Virtue, I mean, he's just buying himself time. Rise does find one more. It's a 4 versus 2. He's blind. He takes a second behind the shield because he knows he's otherwise just going to get shot. He slips away the second time round, but then he leans back in. He's hoping to catch a freebie, but he hasn't been able to see for the past couple of minutes. There's the sudden 2 back.
Yeah.
Benja and Virtue either side, Rise and Mowgli. Now all that's left, but they barely have any time. There's still some fire canister onto the default as well. No, it's been removed. The pressure comes round. Rise, he's on the back end. It's a 1 versus 1. The bulletproof gives some of the game away. There's 3 seconds and a pre-fire. Stay down!
Virtue winning out the 1v1. He goes, you boys have had enough clutches this series. It's our turn for that. A good hold by G2. I really thought for a second when Benja swung onto elbow there in the 2 versus 2 that he was destined to get shot in the back and lose things out, but played it so smart, had the answer on the floor. That's unreal. I can't believe
It's that drop shot.
How has he got away with that? With a hip fire drop shot to get the headshot. That's unbelievable.
Somewhere, Anaton is nodding in approval.
Somewhere back in Japan, I'd imagine by now. Absolutely. Up we go then to Kidstorms for round 2. The map starting exactly as you'd expect, incredibly tight between the 2 teams, coming down to a 1 versus 1.
Hey, remember when the desks were like, this might not be so close?
It's close.
I think there's going to be a lot of this. I think there's going to be a lot of those rounds because it's not that these teams haven't had the moments. It's just we've sort of had one team step to that level and the second team step to that level. This isn't even Battleground. This is where all those moments of mistakes, of missed knowledge, of rotates that were caught out because they weren't aware, that's all gone. All we're left is those bits that we've had of the past 2 maps and past 2 games of they know a lot more. They know a lot more about the holds. They know a lot more about the knowledge. Those kills are going to disappear, and instead, I think most of the rounds throughout this are going to be settled in either the first 20 seconds or the last.
I thought Virtue was really contemplating being a total rat there. Just climb the ladder to take out a drone, then hop straight back down. Needs to be careful as well, because Bibi does have a drone behind the chairs, sat up in Big Tower. They know that he's there. Now, Wolves have been very good at forcing 2v1s, as we commented before, or a 1 versus 1. As said, you've got to be careful. They knew you were there, but got punished for it. Did not know there was a second drone nearby. Good discipline being shown by Wolves.
I mean, the 2 players who ended the previous round are the first to settle some of it this time round. Virtue gone. It was a lead-in from G2 the last time round. They got the entry, and then 2 were instantly bit back here by Mowgli. Can he try and make the difference worse and wider for them, or will G2 get some revenge of their own? The air jab stops the slink away, but Benja just pops his head around, takes the head back off Mowgli. He wants to go on a bit of an adventure, but he has to make sure, as we said before, he doesn't get caught by the French pinch.
Ben just had a rough series because he's currently 2-8 on entry. That's a really bad stat across 2 or 3 maps to be at that sort of stage. But even with that, the teams actually are bang even when it comes to entry throughout the series so far. So whilst he has lacked on the last couple of maps, if he starts showing up here, this could begin to get really, really rough. Really woof for the Wolves. I'll stick with it now. I got halfway there. We'll follow it through.
Benja's waiting with a C4. He wants to play a game of catch. Nobody wants to play with him. Instead, they get themselves an angle, and he's going to try and shoot them in the face from it. He's making things awkward, and they have to try and deal with him, so P4 comes around on the back end. Again, they're a team that loves to do this, the sort of response. However, it's Alaman. Finds the header shrinker, gives them the man advantage. There was almost a second fight there, but Alaman's learnt staircases can be dangerous. He steps away, doesn't give Wolves the opportunity to bite another player out of this G2 hold.
Wolves look a little bit lost at this point. When they're down to only 3 members, they've had to rotate Rise out of Big Tower to come over and join P4 on the push or White. But I don't think even that's enough. Like, the 2 angles of entry here are going to be so far apart. One coming up White, one coming in through Attic, that G2 can simply say to a couple of players, you watch this angle, I'll watch the other, and we're done. What an aggressive play coming out from Benja as well. Steps out into White, gets his man. It's gone from bad to worse for the side of Wolves. If they win this round, it's going to be on sheer gun skill alone. And it's all down to Rise. And something tells me even he can't rise to that situation. It's a round win for G2.
Very good lock-in, very, very well played there. They had a change of face. As soon as the super sign came out, they cut away.
I don't blame them. That man gets enough airtime.
But we had Benja, and we still have Benja, and we didn't have Benja before, and that is a worry for Wolves. The last time these 2 teams met, there was you know, all this sort of fire from him, and it was still 8-6s. Wolves have had to take a timeout this early. They're currently in their timeout because they know they can't let this start to steam away from them.
Maybe I'm overreading, but that looked like a little bit of disagreement, intense, like, debate.
I think that's just how the French are, and the Belgians, historically.
You see when they disagree with anything introduced by the government. They love a good protest. And here maybe protesting more against each other in a bit of disagreement now. Lilu's had a chance to get the troops back on side, but Rise and Bibu there looks a little bit rattled.
This the start of chant wars in the audience. So let's go G2 and let's go Wolves.
Oh yes, and they are the only two chants that you will hear all weekend.
I don't know. I have some faith in Canada.
I have some faith in the Brits that we brought to Canada.
There's a little contingency.
They love a good chant. I mean, Fresh normally starts one or two off as well.
Fresh writes songs. Fresh writes anthems.
He takes it too far. He always takes it too far. Speak of the devil. Hi, Fresh.
Hi, Fresh. Fresh, give us a wave.
Give us a wave, come on.
That really doesn't translate to the viewers at home.
No.
It's a very specific visual.
You have to explain.
Very specific visual joke.
Fresh did not wave.
No, he did not wave.
Don't think we're his biggest fans right now.
Please tell Fresh to wave inside chat.
Yes.
Inside the game, what was the chat? Wolves, as we said. Loud, passionate, vocal. Not a great second round. They were being picked apart one at a time, and it wasn't that G2 were being handed the kills. They were taking them. I mean, we saw Benjo get a 4K in various different places and points on the map across this, or a 3K, and you're sort of thinking, okay, that's a problem, because he's not been allowed to do that throughout all of their showdowns. Wolves have been very good at stopping that exact problem before.
What I find really fascinating is getting an entry. That's always a good start.
Blur with an entry.
Yeah, coming into the series, the commentary was, you know, this front line. It's Mowgli, it's P4, it's Doki, it's Benja. Those players are actually sat. Doki and Benja are bottom rated currently for G2. Mowgli and P4 are sat 3rd and 4th for Wolves. It's all the battle of the flex and the support players right now. Bibu and Rise, Virtue and Alamau have been having a massive series so far. I speak about Alamau, I speak about P4. P4 finds Alamau.
Slips his way in, but Bender's got himself tucked on a very aggressive angle. If this goes unchecked, he can be pretty dangerous, but think of what's above him. There's Soft, there's a worry, there's a swing from him though, takes care of Mowgli. Hopes for a second player, but P4, he's held up in the corridor of Shower. He needs some support to come through. Wolves are sitting, waiting.
They're trying. They're trying so hard to pinch him. They've got 3 players focused on him, but have yet to find him out. Blur's also here for a bit of assistance, but Benja is just dancing around these sight lines right now. It's very, very narrowed in terms of where he can play, but Wolves are the one who have to make a move here. They're the ones who have got to go forward and try and find a kill, and it's not going to be found. There's a swing coming in. Blur in for the assist. Doki finds another, and G2 have bullied them out of the dining room.
Straight after attack timeout as well.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, oh dear. And that is G2 sort of saying, this is our building, this is our ball, we're taking it back and you're not allowed to play with it anymore. Fabian with a smile on his face, and you can understand why. You saw the swing come through there. Benja in a hyper-aggressive place, lying down. They try and swing and get the pickup. They didn't even know where they're being shot from. And that hasn't been something Wolves have suffered before.
That's a real telling sign when 2 or 3 players in the round have no idea where the shots are coming from. For me, though, again, I'll put it all on Benji. Yes, he was really supported by a structure there with the rest of his team. Blur, especially inside a kitchen, giving a lot of that cover to stop him being pushed. But Benji just didn't expose himself to a sightline. It's like he knew where Wolves were likely to be holding. And if he didn't know where, he assumed there would be someone there. So they just could not make a play happen, and they got punished super hard for it. Wolves are the ones who have to drive a way through here, have to find an answer. Because G2 are up 3 rounds, and that is not a good spot to be in when you have no tack timeouts left.
3 up. G2 throughout this entire showdown have not been able to get the first lead between the 2 teams. They have always been sort of trying to rebuild from the backline, and okay, it wasn't the biggest divides in the world. It was a 3-1, it was a 2-1. However, this is a different face for them. This is a different face for Wolves. The fact that Wolves had to call their timeout so early, all that stands between them and going home right now is just what they can do in the server.
It's all about what you can deliver on the day. It doesn't matter how well you play in groups, in playoffs, and anything. Ultimately, what matters the most is how you play on the grand final day, of course, coming up on Sunday. Really excited for the Year 8 panel. We've got it's the season reveal tomorrow. Year 8 panel on Sunday. Lots of stuff to come out this weekend. Always exciting.
Cool things, cool things.
And a fantastic final to follow up. And
Rest
I still
in
don't
peace,
know
Harry.
who the 2 teams are. Rest in peace, Harry.
I mean,
You didn't even see it.
I didn't. I just came back to the reactions afterwards. Apparently the whole room gasped.
They did.
I missed it. I'll watch it back later, and what they might watch is most of the map. G2's handed over the top 2 floors. They've sort of said, look, we're happy with our lock-in defense, because remember how it happened last time was they swung Freezer stairs, got a double, suddenly picked apart, and it was a back and forth on the ground floor. It was the closest round. There's no two ways about that. This time, G2 don't want to have that. They're happy to sort of say, look, we've got our hold. It worked really well in the last round or the round before. Let's play that here, back down in the basement.
Well, think about what you've seen across most of this series so far. You've seen Wolves bringing a ridiculous number of claymores. They've brought air jabs along because they really anticipate you're going to find G2 looking to poke their head above the parapet and snipe out a couple of players later into the round. So whilst you are seeing G2 dug in for now, and I would assume they would stay there, Wolves are probably also mindful of the fact that G2 could look to get aggressive later into the round. So won't want to be, dead set on all 5 players are on site and they are not leaving. That's just not the G2 that we know.
A minute 10. Some pressure coming through. The Flores drones making work of the hold here. Remember how they tried it last time, was just flash and hope the player goes out. Virtue's still able to come back, but look at Doki moving up a bit aggressive. He's got himself locked in. They have an awareness. They're stacked in and trying to get the drop on the fight, but the cover's Virtues. He buys Doki a lifeline. Doki buys one right back. And the aggressive movement up towards the barrel door has just buffered them. They're trying to break their way down the back end stairs. Bibu above E-Books, the pressure from the double door, but as the canisters come out, what was that? I don't even think Doki knows.
P4 with a wonderful shot, bringing at least something back. They've got one pushing in through construction, one sat on kitchen hatch, and one coming down as well. A-Box hatch, sorry. Here comes the drops in, and Bibu's in for a fight. He's found one as well. Suddenly things start to even out. 2 quick kills for G2 as Virtue and Blur, who have had a phenomenal series, are going to destroy Wolves yet again. G2 are 3 rounds away from sending the French side home.
Where was this map 1 G2 and where has map 1 Wolves gone? The pressure has obviously intensified. However, far from over, and with mistakes starting to slip through and eke through on both teams, it's not been clean, it's always been close. This site more than any others. The difference is, can they do it on the others? We find ourselves heading to the 4th site.
I thought you were going to say, can they do it on a rainy night in Stoke?
Can they do it on a rainy night in Stoke? Can they do it on a very cold, snowy day on Montreal?
The answer so far appears to be no, but G2, a real rally coming out. And I know that it isn't often we really get to talk about Virtue, being honest. Again, it's always about Doki, it's about Benjamin, Alamar in the front line. It's about, being honest, Blur, who really underperformed during the group stage. Those 2 players currently sat as the 2 highest rated in this squad. Really getting themselves known. And Virtue had a rough first map, left in 1v4s a lot of the time, but this map, he is flying.
It's the difference as well of G2 since they sort of first appeared in playoffs, got out of groups versus G2. Generally, the average rating of all the team has gone down, but Virtue and Benja are the only 2 who have stepped up statistically their performance from groups, and they needed it. Again, how many teams have fell victim to G2?
Oh boy.
What are you doing, Rise?
He's playing the Nino. Shout out to those who may remember that one.
Nino.
Heroic on a big charge in through elbow to make it work on the downstairs site. Not forgetting we aren't on the downstairs site. That was just won by G2. So instead we're on the upstairs. And rather than bringing Ossa here to be what helps you plant, you instead got the shield on side. Not going to give you anywhere near as much cover as what a Monsieur and Ossa might, but it does give you the ability to run at people's faces. I forget what team did this, but we did see a team scream through green using a blitz.
Yep.
And they just crushed the other side. I want to say it was a CAG game, maybe.
It probably usually is. This is a very aggressive hold, and it's punished. I was about to say, the fact that the entire stage wall is open, Alamar's playing an isolated position here on the stairs. Rise is in, and he's up, and he's round. Does he know? He's pushed a little bit further back. There's the swing and the reveal. He's blind. He's got a shotgun, sure, but only otherwise hope that he isn't swung from the side. There's Bibu going for the close angle, takes it out. A lot of damage in the meantime. Cannot get the second Benja, but he's stuck down a long corridor. Swings around the corner, can't make the motion. He's knives blind. P4 left in a bit of a wake in a 2 versus 4. Gets one, a free take, but look at the position of G2. You've got one tucked on the corner of the plant. You've got one in attic above and on the back line. It's a tough, forced fight.
I mean, with Blur being close to stage, now dropping his way back behind the benches and Doki above, they simply cannot plant. They need to kill players here. And This round felt like a little bit of desperation from Wolves with the Blitz coming out, but they've achieved nothing with it, unfortunately. Have got themselves in a 2v3. It's far from over yet. But looking at how G2 have played that round out, so impressed. Every time there was a gunfight being taken, even by the Blitz, there was always someone else giving cover from either inside meeting or up green. Really good team play from G2, which I think should guarantee them this 5th round.
But it would not be the first time. The swing on the fight, he looks away at the worst time! Oh, and that's a little bit tragic. That could have gone either way. It was who was snappier. Shinka, he's in the fight with the Azami on the second story. Doki's out of there. See you later.
He is out of dodge. He probably would have sooner have dropped the hatch, but obviously he didn't. He ran away, so Doki could get the sideswipe if he's not too careful. No, it's actually ran all the way away.
He's gone.
He did the hatch.
He's like, nah, mate. I'm not having any of that, and fair enough, why would you? Shinka doesn't have the diffuser. They last isolated it down a very long firing line of the kitchen corridor. Doesn't have anything done really towards the site, because remember, everything that was opened up was already opened up by G2. This is their hold, their idea, their Oregon.
And my God, is it proving to be their Oregon and a half, 5-0. I keep taking a look over at Wolves as well, just to see, you know, how are they looking right now? And they do look a little bit disheveled, a little bit lost.
It's the Des sign.
So, for those who don't know about that one, Love Siege, Hate Des has been the kind of thing for the longest time. But the Love Siege, Hate Fresh one, I'm happy to have one of either. We can flip it round when they hate Fresh more than me.
Yeah, Love Siege, Hate Fresh, simple as.
There it is.
Rainbow Six. You've got to get a photo with the sign.
Of course it's Gibby and Whip It as well, of course it is.
All right. I mean, G2, 2 rounds away. 2 rounds away from pushing yourself forward and being another dispatcher of another team, Wolves.
Yep.
They have to find something that is so impossible to find.
You've got to dig deep. But the thing is, take a look down the left-hand side of your screens. We've gone through 5 rounds so far.
Yep.
Yet Wolves sit on just 11 kills. 11 kills across 5 rounds. You may as well call it 2 a round at that point. That shows just how far away they have been from success in each of these rounds.
I mean, Virtue and Benja are 16-3 between the pair of them.
Terrifying, isn't it? Terrifying.
What do you do? And we asked these same questions on the first map. There was a slide of it of the second of how do you stop a player that's popping off? How do you stop a player that has found themselves?
Kill him.
It came a bit late here for G2. There's no 2 ways about it. But if you're them and you're Fabian, you'll probably say it came at just the right time. Here, a little bit of a wait. Wolves, they want to make sure they can get this first engagement. Start on the right foot, a foot they've been very good at, very solid on. They're trying to isolate. Maybe the rotate, the player. Benja with a C4 is just tucked onto the laundry stairs. He can take this as he pleases. P4's made his way in. He's going to hit the barbs above. Will they loose the C4 from underneath?
As of yet, no, but Benja, you just know he's going to get a backstab here unless they're drawing him out, but the drones have missed everything. They're still looking at front door, but you can just see Benja going for a swing and causing a little bit of a headache for them unless they're careful.
Doki is trying to survive a very dangerous position here. And that's also why Benja's where he's at. So if they move their way around...
Oh, no, he didn't know.
No, he didn't know that they were down. Now they've got the awareness, they've got to pay attention to it, and the pressure can go through. He was trying to keep Doki safe.
He was trying to get P4, but Benja was tucked inside the garage as well to the right-hand side. I thought that's who he was going for, but no. Instead finds neither and backs away to safety. A very explosive start in the southeast side of the building here, but Wolves feel like they have some control, only for Doki to find his man.
I was going to say, how did he escape with all the pressure that came through, but it was plucky and lucky, and then he leans back in for a fight against people that have been hunting him mercilessly. Rise, falls, right on the side of the trophy door, another one etched and collected with the impact. The Pokeball, Doki, thank you very much. Now, they can pay attention to the rest of it. They have their route through. They still have their side hold, and that's the big problem, is you look at what Wolves have spent, and you look at what has been taken away from G2. Very little. The side, the pressure, the swing onto Trophy. They've forced Alamau. He's pulled a bit further back, and Shinka's trying to find the fight with the player on the back end of it. With this being locked, they should be able to get that open, but they have no pressure anywhere else. Without pick control, without the fire, what can you do? Benja. 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 Benja! Squeeze round. Takes it on the back. Bibu's left alone on white stairs that's locked on the top. There's somebody behind him. He's able to win that one out.
Deleted. This is almost like it's a slaughter of the Wolves right now. A real culling, and G2 are the farmers. Bibu is ready to try and take a fight, but he finds nothing. G2 have gone 6-0 on their Oregon defense. 1 round stands between them and a ticket to the next round.
G2, let me level with you. Let me talk to you right now. Don't mess this one up. Because they can. Wolves can fight back. Wolves can bring a huge game, but so can G2. And at this point, they're playing so solid. The gun game is sharp. The movements are together. Wolves, they have these little bits, but with that gun game, the difference right now, it's proving beyond tough. G2, if they start to step the foot off the gas because they're at where they're at, that is when things will fall apart. It takes more than just Wolves stepping up.
Look at the difference of Bank to here.
Exactly.
How strong Wolves were to kick this series off. It's now gone in full reverse, and it's G2 in command and control. Defensive round downstairs, that is how Wolves are going to stake potentially their final attempts, their final round here at the 6th Invitational 2023. Starting out with a hold by the looks of it, somewhat on the upstairs as well, with a couple of walls being reinforced off. They want to keep on playing around that big tower area, take out a couple of drones, likely then dip away. For the most part, very, very standard. But I can't get away from that feeling, Fluke, that in one of these 6 rounds, G2 will find the answer, whether it's by playing straight and narrow siege or to a little bit of cheese.
They've only got to get lucky once.
That's it.
Wolves, they have to play precise, they have to play tight, they have to play as a unit, which they definitely can do, but the pressure for them, is it insurmountable or not? That's the break. And Benja's going to see if he can try and break that instantly, the Nook, on an adventure.
This is the kill spread, 26-6 across Doki, Virtue, and Benja. It's unfathomable how far clear they are right now of the rest of Wolves. Benja's working his way through. Mowgli is waiting. This will be the big 1v1 to start things off. Benja on a quick peek, straight back in. He knows exactly what's going down.
It's like the meme where you walk in and then turn around and walk right back out.
Yep.
Constantly spotted by the Valk. They know the pressure's coming around. They don't know that they're being watched, but there's not much you can really do if you're in the positions that they're in. As we said, they've sort of locked themselves down underneath. They're happy to just sort of know when the drop might be coming on the hatch, or know when the pressure might come around here on the back end. Doki.
Because they saw the Nook back away. I don't know if they know that Doki stepped in. Yes, they do, as shots of return. Mowgli taking a bit of damage there away from Doki.
And that's it, but G2, oh, they miss out. The fleeing player, they don't want to hand them the fight. They don't want to hand them the danger of the corner. It just takes a grenade to get a bounce around, and P4 pulls back as well. They suddenly realize where all the pressure's coming from, where the support's coming from, and as I said, G2 have time. You assume they won't be given the E-box break that easily. There's still bits of control, but look at the health of Mowgli now. If he's the front runner, he's got to be very pinpoint.
Kaz, it's been a bit of a cagey start. Mowgli's got himself in a couple of gunfights, but largely Wolves have just sat back on site here, giving G2 the run of the map. But I think they're pretty happy with this as well. They've got the C4 to play behind, a few smoke canisters in back pocket. Lots of options here for Winter. Goodbye, Blur. Good aggression being shown by P4.
I mean, that was well rehearsed, well played. As I said, they're happy for that camera to be there. There's not a lot you can do. You can do that, as proven by that point. And, well, G2, they lose a player. They're a bit surprised by that. I don't know if they know that they were being watched the whole time. Can they try and pull this one round to close it out here, 7-0? P4, he stacks up, eyes towards Laundry. The grenade is going to stack up right towards him, but it's caught by the disc. They're not able to force the pressure. The second will bounce through, but he just survives and pulls back.
Just gets away with it there as well. Really thought he was done to rights, but no. Kept himself going. Doki's really trying to fight towards Shaiko spot here, but it's not happening. Virtue looking to join in, but Alamal's gone down. Wolves have held firm, but they crumble. 2 fall down into a 3 versus 3. Shinka wins out the 1. Doki rounding into elbow here, moving his way forward. Has to win this fight, but by the looks of it, will not be able to get away with it. Shinka looking to challenge back in as well. Down goes Virtue. 1 left, and Wolves hold on.
The first of maybe of many, or the only. That's always the question. That's going to be the question that you got to ask every single time. As we said, G2 just need 1 set of things to go right. They need 1 engagement to swing into their favor. We talk about how siege timing is a thing. It is.
100%.
And you can plan and you can prepare and you can be ready for it, but sometimes if something goes wrong, something goes wrong.
I thought for a few moments, Wolves have pulled back so early, and G2, they've got all the time in the world to make this work, but it's kind of weird. It's the same thing I was saying about G2, the back end of the first half, that even when they're back on site, you might expect them to come and try and be a bit cheeky, like we saw back on Skyscraper. Air jab, 6 claymores. They came armed to the hilt to stop G2 being able to poke and prod at them. That's exactly what Wolves have just done back to G2, with that cheeky C4 coming out, with Mowgli looking to go after a couple of gunfights up towards the top side of this site. They are still poking at G2 and are willing to take fights against them. It's only 1 round, but it's enough to start building a bit of confidence.
5 seconds to insertion.
It's just 0-0, Wolves. It's 0-0. You have to keep that idea. You have to say it's a 1 round at a game, obviously. A lot of games function, but the only thing that carries over from round to round on this, apart from bans decided way in advance, is momentum, and that can always be stolen. You can always win a round out. You start everything fresh.
Absolutely can. Here we go then. Kid Storms, once again, potentially the last site for Wolves here at SI, unless they can hold on and battle their way back in. Benja up there quite early on the window, looking to do a little bit of a challenge inside of Trophy itself, trying to remind the Wolves that you are not safe at any point in this round when we could be charging full force at you. So Wolves have dug in for the most part. P4 and Rise are currently sat inside Kitchen. They're the ones who are looking to prevent any fishing going in from below, the nades being sent skywards, of which there are 6 on side for G2. So that just tells you wholeheartedly they want to get in below, they want to start getting nades sent skywards, they want to make Wolves sweat.
Will they? I mean, at this point, they're not directly fighting back. They still have their support structure. The grenades are rolling out to no avail. They're trying to find that first pin. And it's Stokie right up white, gets 1, cannot find the second. Mowgli, a very important fight that came at a big cost of damage. And you're looking at a buck, you're looking at soften the wings of grenades. And Alamau spraying on, but round the back is P4. The rotate up the tower stairs, nets a double. And that's the second of safety here. G2, they're trying to strike hard, hot and heavy. And with the swing going into their favor, it's suddenly a 3-2-2. A bit more width, a bit more angle. And Benja, he's so aggressive.
Benja.
2 versus 2.
There's one more. Don't think he knew about the second that was still inside there. Rise had doubled up, but G2 have pulled back. They've managed to battle their way in and bring it down to a 2 versus 2. Benja and Rise both down to a slither of HP. Which way could this possibly go?
It's a pause, it's a stun, it's a swing, and a wing and a Benja catch! It is all down to Shinka, the back line, the 5th player of a team that has some bite and fight left. They know the plant's going, they get the first!
Oh, Shinka.
And they've got to stop the plant, they hold up, they take over. They get aggressive with a ring around the rosies, they pull themselves to a safer distance. They don't see it, and Shinka keeps the Wolves' dream alive!
How does he keep doing it? A player that for a long time felt like he sat in the background throughout this competition has made himself known in so many critical rounds and critical moments. Wolves had yet another strike on their tally of clutches, and G2, unfortunately for them, have often been the victim of it.
I mean, that rotate round the back end as well. Huge for Wolves. Benja just dipping in, and look at how G2's moving. This is the point. Suddenly there's a G2 player putting pressure on the site. Suddenly they're inside, and suddenly Wolves are biting back, and then suddenly the conversation goes from when will this be over to when might G2 put a pause in play and talk to the team.
At what point do you start to believe, Emmy?
I cannot answer. I can't answer because you don't want to put anything in the water. You don't want to be the difference maker. When does Fabian think he needs a pause? Does he?
For all we know after this round, if it carries on this way. And again, normally it's a few rounds in words to correct the direction of the team rather than trying to, again, focus on the more micro differences. Here, looking at the lineup, though, 2 hard breachers and Ossa on side, smokes. They are looking at going Route 101 inside Big Tower, get the walls open up on the top floor and on the ground floor, and make a plant happen once you've got attic control.
I always describe this as a traditional French take, a traditional BDS take, because they're the team I first saw running it quite a lot. You set up on the tier 1 and the tier 2 of the tower, you get your angles and ideas through lock off attic, but look at this. They're also doubling down with a root and a rotate on the back end. They're sort of drawing attention. They're making sure that they can't have the freedom of a back line to lob smokes, lob pressure, because the thing that stops the plant on the stage with the Ossa is that corner.
Yeah. You know full well by forcing players away from that back right corner too, they have to move over towards the left and play on the kitchen rotate. G2 can get some really good long angles onto that if they set this up correctly. The one thing that has always stung teams on this site is not having good flank watch in the basement. I think back to APAC North and the number of teams that have crumbled when setting up for an execute here. Because of that, they cannot ignore the downstairs. They need to have someone flicking through those cams, keeping an eye on the flank if they're going to make this work.
Vibu, he's adventurous. He's just rotated before the breach comes around so we can hold the power position. P4!
It sees all.
Absolutely everything is being pinged in cover, and this is it. It's soft above them.
Oh, Rise!
Oh, Rise! Quickly traded, and Doki with a double, but Mowgli, he gets an important one back before it drops. It suddenly exploded. He's down. He went for the rotate up the tower stairs. The intel has been so good from Wolves here, and they have punished them. Remember where that cam is.
Mowgli's down, but largely unrecoverable here. He's more information. Oh no! You've made the play, you've opened it up. It's a 1 versus 1. Doki makes the shot, and G2 call the Wolfpack.
G2 7-2, but it had to be this way. They have moved along the lower bracket with the dangerous knowledge of they have been there before, and Wolves, they might not have. This could be a first swing for some of them. You know it will not be the last. Here they must fall.
What a roller coaster ride that series was for the G2. Started down and bank, a little bit downtrodden, but really battled their way back on the second half of Sky. And Oregon was a dominating performance.
I mean, it was a difference of both the two teams, and I think that's the thing. You have to remember how long the tournament is, how many games, how many rounds, how many fights that have been do or die these teams have done. Wolves, at one point, the difference of them getting out of groups was 2 rounds against Dire Wolves. They have found themselves in the top 6 teams of the whole world of Rainbow Six and have been able to play on this stage with some fresh players and a fresh idea and a project that has taken a year to get here. But as I said before, it is not the end for them.
You can't take it away from Wolves either. You know, for any player who's never been here before to get onto a stage is a massive achievement. Looking at how they've gone over the last year, both of these two teams, no one expected that both G2 and Wolves would be in the top 6. So fair play to them. We've seen some fantastic performances. I really hope this becomes more of a trend and it carries on. And all beef, I think, is left in the past now because they know what a good series that was too.
But what do you say of G2? A team that has refused to die this tournament and probably could have and probably might have at some points, and suddenly they keep finding this fire. Is Benjamaster the difference? Is Fabian? Who knows?
I think like any team will tell you, it's not down to one player that you need to win a championship. It's a team of 5. Not 5 individuals, a team. And I think you've seen real good team play start to come online there from both teams throughout that series. Just ultimately G2 were the ones who had more of it.
Well, obviously, we'll be having some words soon, and you can see the emotions on the players. You can see how much it means, but it's their first time. It's always the thing. This is the heart of Siege. This is the home of Siege. And
let's give it up for Wolves, guys. They deserve this. Entertainers from day one. Whether it was Rise losing his marbles or some of the rounds they won, through to getting here to the main stage, it's been a journey, and thank you so much for taking us on it with you.
So what happens next for G2?
They go and play another team, and another team, and another team. There is still such a way for them to go. It's no doubt a huge performance, and I know we're starting to get ready for an interview in just a moment as well. But for them, as we said, we saw the full journey in that series. 5 individuals playing together eventually grew into a team, and my God, if they deserved it.
Can't argue it. Can't argue it, and you won't be able to, but that's enough of us. Let's throw it over to Ian Chambers on the stage.
Emmy, thank you very much. Commiserations to Wolves. They do exit the Invitational here, but G2 continue to push on. And I am joined by a young man, I think, who deserves a huge round of applause right now. It's Benja. This is your first time at an event of this magnitude, and you seem to be completely unfazed by it all. How does it feel to be standing here this close to the hammer?
Fine.
You're just chilling with it?
Yeah,
The thing with G2 is you've got such an illustrious history as an org, and you've got Fabian now running the show. You are the latest addition to this roster. What do you think it is? We heard the casters talking about it just then. There's no one true thing that can make a team all of a sudden come together and start to put together performances like this. But if I was to ask you the question, what is it that's changed for G2? Is it you? Is it Fabian? What is it?
I mean, first of all, it's me, but it's also like the good vibes, and we are playing together as a team now.
What are the vibes like behind the scenes? I mean, I've seen you, and I know a lot of our team have seen you behind the scenes over the last 2 weeks. You get on really well, but at the same time, Fabian, he tells you off if you're getting into a little bit of trouble here and there, right?
Yeah, he does, but yeah.
Do you feel like you've got revenge on Wolves here? Because, you know, they did give you defeat a little bit earlier on in the tournament, and now you got the revenge. What was it this time around that made you the better team?
Last time we played them and lost 2-0, we played really shit, and this time we played normally, so we won.
I think that's fair enough, right? 19 years old. You're super chilled. You're probably the most relaxed interview ever. You're a man of very few words, right? But I got a feeling that maybe you would tear up a little bit if you eventually lift this by the end of the weekend. Yeah?
Yeah.
Anything you want to say to your fans here in the audience right now?
No, just thank you for the support, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Give it up for Benja one more time. Thank you, Benja. Like I said, a man of few words, but luckily there's a man on the desk who can talk forever. Milos, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ian. I know you could talk our ears off too, don't worry about it. And we love it when we hear your voice. Welcome back, everybody, to the Endless Desk. And there it is, G2 are victorious. They move on through and continue in the competition. Wolves, a very valiant effort. We can see it, this team's finally made it to a big stage at SI. They gave it their all, they went to map 3, but some small things to work on. Otherwise, let's focus on G2, because the last time we saw G2 at SI doing so well was the one that, you know, back in 2019, where they made it all the way to the end and got our infamous match against Team Empire and a full-on victory for their second hammer.
They did, and it's clearly quite a different team, right? This is not the same G2 by any stretch of the imagination, but I really think this new G2 plays the current meta so well. They are aggressive on defense. They're trading each other so incredibly well, and their new pickups, players that people weren't 100% sure of coming into this tournament, players like Benja specifically, man, oh man, did he ever perform today.
He keeps proving them wrong.
He does.
He keeps proving them wrong, and I guess there's a few heroic people wondering, how did we let this kid go? Now, G2 for me today, especially on the defense, the one thing that you want to see when you're a coach, and the one thing that Fabian will be going backstage and telling them is, boys, playing off of each other today was absolutely excellent. The refrags on that Oregon were excellent. There was a situation where one player is running away from Blitz when Wolves tried to pick up the pace, and pick up the pace, they're playing Blitz. One of the, I think it was Benja that ran away, and suddenly there's Virtue and Alamo swinging the blitz, and he's dead. And it was constantly throughout that defense. It wasn't about layering like it was on Skyscraper. It was about playing together and not allowing Wolves an inch of the map. And G2 did that very well on the defense. Obviously, they went flawless on it.
Fresh, do you remember back in map 1 where you telestrated that Teller's rush back on bank? That was the last time Wolves won an attack. Last 2 maps didn't get a single attacking round, and you just gotta talk about how incredible that is for G2 have just pulled off.
If anything, this Invitational, more than any event we've had ever in the past, any control you have on the attacking side almost guarantees you a win. We said this clearly in the groups. We went through it the same way in the playoffs, and now on the main stage, it cannot be any clearer than just this.
It's incredible. I mean, it's the meta right now, right? The defense are just willing to play so aggressively. They're willing to get up in your face, and they've got a lot of tools to do that well. I mean, we saw a lot of the traps back in map number 2. We saw a lot more kind of the Azami kind of fragging back in map 1. It's really nice to see such a fast-paced style of game here at the Invitational.
Jack, I want to hammer it in on what Jesse's been saying as aggressive playstyle, because one thing I noticed with my I don't know anything about Siege eyes is that there has never been an event where also lurking and constantly flanking, such a prominent gameplay style for all of our teams, but we saw it even more in this game.
And that's where I think that, G2 have got it right in terms of they've got a couple of entry players now that it feels very natural that when they make something happen over here, you're getting a lurk or a flank off over here, and they've got the balance on that team to do so now, rather than having, too many lurk players or players playing out of position. This is what I keep saying about G2 with having a lot of balance, and I think that's where they're finding success. They're under a unified vision, and then they're also creating space and opportunities for each other.
So now with G2 moving through, I just want to quickly finish this up on Wolves because they played excellently. They got this far. That makes them pretty much champion material when you make it all the way here to the main stage. But you saw the love and camaraderie that Fabian and Rise have between them, especially given the career pretty much that they've had either playing against one another or together for a short amount of time.
They played together on Vitality, of course. I think for Wolves, this tournament, when you look at it, take a step back and look at it holistically, is that it has been a success. It didn't start off well. They went on a great run of momentum. They made the main stage, which I think, at the start of the tournament, they would have said we would be happy with making the main stage. Sure, as soon as you're on the main stage, everyone is going to start thinking what ifs. But, they'll go back, they'll regroup, they'll have to think about any changes that might get made, changes in playstyle, changes in players, whatever it may be. But I think overall, this tournament has been a success for them.
Yeah, I think they're also working well with their new players, right? I mean, it's not the brand newest, but still Mowgli coming in relatively recently. I think Shinka has been performing well for them as well in those late rounds. We saw the big clutch, of course, here in this map as well. So I really do think that Wolves, they should hold their heads up high. I know this was a tough game for them, and obviously the attacks were not really there for them today, but they are an incredible team, and of course, they're here for a reason.
And both of our teams have been feeding off of the energy of the crowd, which, for all the players that are here, they have not really experienced it this way. Wolves have had a bit of it, G2 have had a bit of it, but nothing like this before. That's something that you have to account for, right, Jack?
Nothing quite like this either. If, just think about the layout of this arena.
Yep.
There's fans on every side from a player's point of view. It's not, in Charlotte, Berlin, where it's just straight on in smaller venues. This is a big venue with a big crowd that is going to get hype. And, as we go through, at times they were behind G2, at times they were behind Wolves. It gives the players, they don't hear it, but they feel it.
I mean, overall, the audio here definitely makes it tough to not notice it. But now, our MVP for the matchup. Who is it? In the words of Michael Jackson, as they say. Bring it up. There it is, Virtue MVP of our matchup. I want to remind everybody that G2 are a massive mix of nationalities on the squad. Virtue, the APAC representation, still left on here. So, James Mandy, I know you're very happy in the backstage.
Yeah, Virtue, I think, really did step it up, especially in this third map, right? He and Benja were the ones to really come forward and start getting aggressive on these defenses. So I love to see that come through from Virtue. He even had that great play kind of back on bank. I know they lost that map, but I still thought he was playing relatively well back then as well. Of course, we saw those Kiba barriers up on the top floor. He got that 1v2 clutch. So Virtue, it's nice to see him developing. He's been on this team longer than any other player at this point. Sometimes it still feels like he's the guy they picked up just recently, but no, I mean, he is kind of the old guard, and I really do think that he has been continuing to grow on this roster and continuing to look so good.
He's been on this team that long. I was on the team when he was on when we first met. So, yeah, I think for Jake, like he is an unsung hero of this roster. He does a lot of the dirty work, and I think the fact that he did so well today is a combination of two things. I think he's been feeling himself with regards to shooting. He's been allowed to play on a little bit more expansive operators, particularly on the attack. We saw there it was Ash main on the screen. And then the second thing is actually he played very well. I talked about how G2 were playing off the teammates. Jake was there pretty much every time to pick up refrags. I'm thinking specifically Oregon here. He was picking up the kills that he should be picking up every single time in the situations that him and his teammates were creating. He's a very smart player, and I'm glad that we're finally talking about him a little bit, because it's obviously a lot about Doki. It's going to be a lot about Benjamaster. And Jake doesn't necessarily get the highlights he deserves.
Yeah, we'll probably see it soon on the highlights up on the big screen. But like you talk back to about round number 4 where Virtue and Doki play on the bunker right here.
This one.
Right? Yeah, this is exactly what you were talking about, Fresh, where he's playing with his teammates. He's moving around the bomb site, making these little adaptations and rotations to help out those teammates when they go down, when they lose those frags.
Yep.
Oh, he has just been working so well with this team, and it really does kind of speak to the fact that G2 right now look like a total package, a complete unit.
And we'll see how far that unit goes through here at the Invitational. Very quickly, let's recap our bracket just to show you how things are going. We still have 2 best-of-3s to go through today after this. The second lower bracket match and the upper bracket OXG W7M that's later today. G2 advanced, Wolves knocked out of the tournament, and Koi versus Astralis. I know everybody loves Koi, but still, we're in North America. There's a lot of NA fans sitting here in Montreal, so Astralis, they're gonna have a lot of people backing them up in their matchup. That's what we are awaiting in just a few minutes. But to wrap up our desk for this post-game section, thank you very much, G2, for this matchup and Wolves. Unfortunately, they're eliminated. It's been a lot of fun having them on here. Thank you very much, Jesse and Jack. We are going to take a quick break. However, if you remember, every Invitational, we have commendations for people in the community that we absolutely love and that make our community better. And one of them is our own colleague that is the first one receiving it this week, Ante Medics, as people will know him. He gets the first commendation with Ian in just a bit. So we'll see you for more on the desk.